Hello to all fans of Naruto Lemon. I will post all Naruto Lemon Yaoi, Yuri, or Naruto Lemon stories only on the Boosty channel because Uncle YouTube condemns this. Therefore, I invite everyone who wants Naruto Lemon content to my Boosty channel. Good luck.
お前はどこまで見えている。俺死に様か。
Chapter 1: A New Beginning. In the quiet village of Konoha, amidst the bustling streets and serene landscapes, a unique story was unfolding. It was the tale of a girl who bore the legacy of two powerful bloodlines, the Otsutsuki clan and the Uzumaki clan. This girl was me, Naruto Uzumaki. My life began not just as a child of the village, but as a bearer of ancient powers and burdens that would shape my destiny in ways I could scarcely imagine. From the moment I opened my eyes, the world around me seemed both wondrous and daunting. I was born with a remarkable heritage, a blend of the Otsutsuki clan's otherworldly abilities and the Uzumaki clan's remarkable vitality. My parents were well aware of the weight of my existence. They had hoped that I would grow into a beacon of strength and grace, but the path was fraught with challenges. The early days of my life were marked by an overwhelming sense of wonder. I marveled at the vibrant colors of the village, the laughter of children, and the warmth of the sun that bathed everything in a golden hue. Yet, beneath this veneer of normalcy, there was an undercurrent of unease. As the Jinchuriki of Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, I carried a burden that set me apart from others. My first few years were a mix of exhilaration and confusion. My powers were evident from a young age. The raw energy that surged through me was a constant reminder of the immense force I held within. I remember the first time I accidentally unleashed a burst of chakra, a shimmering wave of energy that sent objects flying and left me in awe. The village elders, while recognizing my potential, also saw the danger in it. They were wary of me, their eyes reflecting a blend of fear and curiosity. Kurama, the nine-tailed fox sealed within me, was both a source of immense power and a shadow that loomed over my existence. From an early age, I could feel Kurama's presence, a deep, rumbling voice that occasionally echoed in my mind. At first, it was terrifying. The voice was like a thunderstorm trapped within my consciousness, a constant reminder of the beast that resided within me. But as I grew older, Kurama became more than just a force of nature. He became a mentor, a guide through the labyrinth of my emotions. One of my earliest memories with Kurama was when I was barely 4 years old. I had been playing by the riverbank, the water sparkling under the sunlight, when I accidentally triggered a burst of chakra. The surge of energy caused the river to swell, and I watched in horror as the water began to flood the area. Kurama's voice, surprisingly calm, reached out to me. "Control it, little one," Kurama advised, his tone deep and resonant. "Focus on the flow, not the force." His words, though simple, were profound. I focused on the river, trying to steady my breathing and calm the storm within. Slowly, the water receded, and the flood was contained. It was a small victory, but it was the beginning of a long journey of learning to harness my powers. As I grew older, the weight of my heritage became more apparent. The villagers' whispers and glances often pierced through the veneer of normalcy. They spoke of the Otsutsuki clan with reverence and fear, and my presence was a constant reminder of the power that lay within me. Despite their trepidation, there were moments of kindness from those who saw beyond the legend and recognized the child I was. My early interactions with other children were mixed. Some were friendly, drawn to the vibrant energy I exuded. Others were distant, their curiosity mingled with fear. I remember one boy, a year older than me, who would often stare from afar. His name was Sasuke Uchiha. His dark eyes seemed to hold a depth that I couldn't quite understand, and despite his aloof demeanor, I felt a strange pull towards him. The village's perception of me was influenced by the tales of the Otsutsuki clan and the demon fox within me. The Otsutsuki were known for their celestial powers, their ability to manipulate energy and defy conventional limits. The legends spoke of their grandeur and their fall from grace. My existence was a living embodiment of that legacy, a paradox of strength and vulnerability. One of the village elders, a wise woman named Tsunade, often visited me. She saw beyond the myth and recognized the child within. She would sit with me, sharing stories of the village and imparting wisdom that I would grow to appreciate. "You are a bridge between two worlds," she would say, her gaze both gentle and penetrating. "The Otsutsuki legacy is a powerful one, but it is your heart that will define your path." Her words resonated deeply with me. They were a reminder that while my heritage was a significant part of who I was, it was not the entirety of my existence. I had the power to shape my own destiny, to forge a path that was uniquely mine. As I grew from a toddler into a young child, my connection with Kurama deepened. He became a source of guidance, his voice less thunderous and more like a steady hum in the background of my mind. He taught me to control my chakra, to harness the immense power within me and use it wisely. His lessons were not always easy, but they were crucial in helping me navigate the complexities of my existence. The early years of my life were a blend of discovery and challenge. I learned to embrace my powers and the legacy that came with them. I discovered that while I was different from others, I had the ability to forge connections, to find moments of joy amidst the struggle. My journey had just begun, and the path ahead was filled with both trials and triumphs. In the midst of this tumultuous journey, I remained hopeful. I clung to the belief that I could find my place in the world, that I could rise above the challenges and become a beacon of strength and hope. My early childhood was marked by a quest for understanding, both of myself and the world around me. It was a journey that would shape my destiny and define the legacy I would leave behind. And so, with each passing day, I continued to grow and learn, guided by the wisdom of Kurama and the hope that one day, I would find my true place in the world, a place where I could embrace my heritage and forge my own path. The journey was far from over, but it was one that I faced with determination and courage, ready to meet whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 2: The Burden of Power. The sun had barely risen over Konoha when I awoke to the familiar sensation of power stirring within me. As a child of barely 5, I was already acutely aware of the immense force that lay dormant inside me. It was a power that both fascinated and frightened me, a legacy of the Otsutsuki clan intertwined with the primal energy of Kurama, the nine-tailed fox. Kurama's presence was like an ever-present shadow, a constant reminder of the force that resided within me. His voice, deep and resonant, often echoed in my mind, stirring the stillness of my thoughts. It was both comforting and unsettling, a duality that I was beginning to understand. One crisp morning, I sat by the edge of the village's small river, my legs dangling over the edge. The gentle flow of water was a stark contrast to the storm of energy within me. I had always found solace by the river, its tranquility a counterpoint to the tumultuous power that surged inside me. As I dipped my fingers into the cool water, Kurama's voice rumbled in my mind, a familiar presence. "Little one, you must learn to control the power within you," Kurama advised, his tone carrying a note of ancient wisdom. "It is a force that can both create and destroy." I looked out over the river, feeling the weight of his words. "But how?" I asked quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "How can I control something that feels so overwhelming?" "Control begins with understanding," Kurama replied. "You must understand the nature of the power you wield and the responsibility it carries. Focus on the energy within you, not just its potential, but its essence." I closed my eyes, trying to center myself. The sensation of Kurama's chakra, a swirling mass of energy, was palpable even when I was still. It was a force that seemed to pulse in time with my own heartbeat, a reminder of the power that lay just beneath the surface. "Focus on the flow," Kurama continued. "Imagine it like the river you see before you. Just as the river flows and bends, so must your chakra." I took a deep breath, trying to visualize the energy within me as a flowing river. I imagined it moving smoothly, weaving through my body with purpose. I tried to calm the chaotic surge of chakra that often threatened to overwhelm me. It was like trying to tame a wild beast, a task that felt nearly impossible. As I concentrated, I felt a slight shift. The raw energy within me began to stabilize, its chaotic nature becoming more controlled. It was a small victory, but it was significant. I could feel Kurama's approval, a faint warmth that spread through my mind. You are making progress, Kurama said, his voice a soft rumble. But remember, this is only the beginning. The real challenge is not just controlling the power, but understanding how to use it wisely. I nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment mingled with trepidation. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but I felt a glimmer of hope. I was starting to grasp the basics of control, and with Kurama's guidance, I was learning to harness the power that came with my unique heritage. The days that followed were a mixture of intense training and quiet moments of reflection. Kurama's lessons were not always easy, and often, I found myself grappling with the complexities of the chakra within me. There were times when I felt overwhelmed, the power threatening to burst forth uncontrollably. During these moments, Kurama's guidance was crucial. He taught me techniques to channel and direct my energy, to focus on precision rather than raw power. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat alone in the training grounds, practicing a newly learned technique. I had managed to stabilize my chakra flow, but the challenge was to maintain that control amidst distractions. As I practiced, Kurama's voice resonated in my mind, providing both encouragement and critique. You're improving, Kurama said. But remember, true mastery comes with patience. The power you wield is a part of you, but it should not define you entirely. His words were a reminder that while my powers were a significant part of my identity, they did not encompass the entirety of who I was. It was a lesson in balance, between strength and humility, control and freedom. As the weeks turned into months, my bond with Kurama deepened. Our interactions were no longer just about control and power, they became a dialogue, a partnership. Kurama's presence became a source of strength, a reminder that I was not alone in my journey. He was a guide and a confidant, helping me navigate the complexities of my existence. The burden of power was not an easy one to bear, but with Kurama's guidance, I began to see it as an opportunity rather than a curse. I learned to view my abilities as a tool to protect and support those around me, rather than a force to be feared. It was a shift in perspective that gave me hope for the future. As I grew older, the lessons from Kurama became a fundamental part of my training. I continued to develop my skills, learning to wield my chakra with precision and purpose. The burden of power was still present, but it was no longer a weight that dragged me down. Instead, it became a source of strength, a reminder of the incredible potential that lay within me. My early interactions with Kurama were a crucial part of my development. They taught me not only about control and power, but also about the importance of partnership and understanding. As I moved forward in my journey, I carried with me the lessons of those formative years, knowing that with each step, I was forging a path that was uniquely my own. The bond between Kurama and me was a testament to the strength of our connection, a partnership forged through trials and triumphs, guided by mutual respect and understanding. It was a bond that would continue to shape my destiny, guiding me through the challenges that lay ahead and helping me embrace the legacy that came with being a child of the Otsutsuki clan and the Jinchuriki of Kurama. Chapter 3: Whispering Shadows. The streets of Konoha were alive with the usual hustle and bustle of the village. Children laughed and played, their voices mingling with the distant hum of conversation and the clatter of shopkeepers setting up their stalls. Yet, amidst this vibrant scene, I often felt like a shadow drifting on the fringes, a ghost in the bustling tapestry of village life. From a young age, I had been aware of the whispers that followed me wherever I went. The villagers spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously in my direction. The stories about the Otsutsuki clan and the nine-tailed fox had become a part of their daily conversation, and I was the living embodiment of their fears and curiosities. Their words were not always kind, and their glances were tinged with apprehension. As I walked through the market square, clutching a small bundle of groceries, I overheard snippets of conversation that made my heart sink. "Did you see her today? She's the child of the Otsutsuki clan. They say she's a danger to us all," one voice whispered, filled with barely concealed fear. "I heard she's been practicing with that demon fox inside her." "How can we trust her?" another voice added, its tone heavy with suspicion. The words stung, even though I had grown accustomed to them. I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on me, making the world seem colder and more distant. I quickened my pace, eager to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the market. I was used to the isolation, but it never got any easier. In the solitude of my small home, I sought refuge from the harsh realities of village life. The walls of my room were adorned with simple decorations, a few drawings I had made, and a small shrine to my parents. It was a space that felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could momentarily escape the burdens of my heritage. As I sat by the window, gazing out at the village, I heard a knock on the door. I was surprised. Visitors were rare, especially those who came to see me without some ulterior motive. I hesitated before opening the door, revealing a familiar face, Hinata Hyuga. Hinata was a quiet, gentle girl from one of the prestigious clans in Konoha. Her lavender eyes were always soft and kind, a stark contrast to the harshness I often faced. She stood there with a hesitant smile, holding a small bundle of sweets. "Hi, Naruto," she said softly. "I brought you some treats. I thought you might like them." I was taken aback by her kindness. The gesture was unexpected, and it warmed my heart in a way that few things did. I invited her in, and we sat together at the small table in my room. "Thank you, Hinata," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. "It's been a tough day." Hinata nodded, her gaze sympathetic. "I know it must be hard for you. People can be so quick to judge without understanding." Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. We spent the afternoon talking about our lives, sharing stories and dreams. Hinata's presence was a soothing balm to the loneliness I often felt. It was a rare moment of connection, a reminder that not everyone viewed me through the lens of fear and suspicion. As the days went by, I found solace in the company of a few other sympathetic characters. Iruka Umino, the kind-hearted instructor at the academy, noticed my struggles and made an effort to reach out. He was one of the few adults in the village who saw me as more than just a symbol of fear. During one of our training sessions, Iruka approached me with a concerned expression. "Naruto, I know it hasn't been easy for you. The rumors and isolation can be tough, but don't let them define who you are. You have a lot of potential, and I believe in you." His words were a ray of light in the darkness. Iruka's belief in me gave me a sense of hope and purpose. His encouragement was a reminder that despite the shadows cast by the villagers' fears, there were those who saw me for who I truly was. Another ally was Sakura Haruno, a classmate who had initially been wary of me but had gradually come to understand my struggles. She was a strong and determined girl, and her presence provided a sense of camaraderie that I deeply appreciated. One afternoon, as we trained together, Sakura approached me with a serious expression. "Naruto, I know things haven't been easy for you. But you're not alone. We're all part of this village, and we need to support each other." Her words were both reassuring and empowering. They reminded me that even in a village that often felt hostile, there were individuals who were willing to stand by me. Despite the growing support from these kind-hearted individuals, the isolation still lingered. The whispers and judgments from the villagers continued, and their fear of the Otsutsuki legacy and Kurama remained ever present. But the presence of Hinata, Iruka, and Sakura offered me a glimmer of hope, a reminder that there was still kindness in the world. The support I received from these individuals became a source of strength for me. Their understanding and empathy helped me cope with the burden of isolation and gave me the courage to face each day with a renewed sense of determination. The shadows that whispered through the village were not entirely vanquished, but they were tempered by the light of compassion and friendship. As I navigated the complexities of my existence, I clung to the belief that with each step, I was forging a path toward acceptance and understanding. The journey ahead was still fraught with challenges, but I knew that I was not alone. The presence of those who saw beyond the whispers and shadows provided me with a sense of belonging and a renewed sense of purpose. And with each act of kindness, I grew stronger, more determined to overcome the obstacles that lay before me and to prove that even in the midst of darkness, there was always a glimmer of hope. Chapter 4: The Lonely Playground. The playground behind the academy was a quiet haven, a place where the noise of the village seemed to fade into the background. It was here, amidst the rustling leaves and the soft chirping of birds, that I found solace from the harshness of my daily life. This was where I went to practice, to train, and sometimes just to be alone with my thoughts. Most of the other children in the village would play and laugh in groups, their voices mingling in joyous cacophony. But I was often alone. The playground, while usually filled with other kids, became my sanctuary, a space where I could escape the scrutinizing eyes of the villagers and the weight of their whispers. Every day after finishing my academy lessons, I would come here to practice my techniques. My training routine was rigorous, driven by a need to improve and prove myself. The swings, once a place of innocent fun, had become makeshift training equipment. I would use the chains to practice my chakra control, focusing on balancing my energy while swinging back and forth. I could remember the first time I tried this exercise. It had been a clumsy attempt, my chakra fluctuating wildly as I struggled to synchronize with the motion of the swing. My attempts had often ended with me tumbling to the ground, my frustration palpable. But with time and perseverance, I began to see improvement. My chakra control became more precise, and the swings no longer felt like an impossible challenge, but rather a test of my growing skills. In one corner of the playground, there was a large, sturdy tree with low branches, another of my training grounds. I would climb up its trunk and practice my agility, scaling the branches with increasing speed and confidence. The tree was both a symbol of my progress and a reminder of the isolation I faced. While it offered me a place to hone my skills, it also stood as a testament to my solitary journey. My training was not limited to physical exercises. I spent hours practicing my jutsu, focusing on the precise hand signs and the flow of chakra required to perform them. Each jutsu was a challenge, a puzzle to be solved. The process of mastering them was both frustrating and rewarding. The act of creating a technique, of making my chakra manifest in a tangible form, provided a sense of accomplishment that countered the loneliness I often felt. There were days when I allowed myself to play, albeit in a solitary manner. I would sometimes mimic the games the other children played, pretending to be part of their group even if I was alone. I would run around the playground, imagining myself as a hero on a grand adventure, fighting off imaginary foes, and saving the day. These moments of play were a welcome escape, a chance to momentarily forget the weight of my heritage and the isolation it brought. One afternoon, as I practiced my jutsu by the edge of the playground, I noticed a small figure watching me from a distance. It was Hinata, her lavender eyes observing me with a mix of curiosity and concern. She had become a frequent visitor to my training sessions, often sitting quietly on the edge of the playground and watching me practice. Her presence was a small comfort. Despite the isolation I felt, Hinata's consistent visits were a reminder that I was not entirely alone. She never intruded on my training, instead choosing to observe from a distance. Her silent support was a source of encouragement, a reminder that someone cared even if the village as a whole seemed indifferent. On this particular day, after I had finished a particularly challenging exercise, Hinata approached me with her usual gentle demeanor. "You're improving a lot, Naruto," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "Your control over your jutsu is getting better." I smiled, feeling a sense of pride at her acknowledgement. "Thanks, Hinata. It's a lot of hard work, but it feels good to see some progress." She nodded, her eyes reflecting a warm understanding. "I know it must be tough to train alone. But you're doing great. Your determination is really impressive." Her words were a balm to my spirit. While the other villagers remained distant, Hinata's kindness was a beacon of light in my solitary existence. It was moments like these that made the isolation more bearable, a reminder that there were people who saw beyond the fears and prejudices. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the playground, I finished my training and gathered my things. Hinata walked with me to the edge of the playground, her presence a comforting companion. We talked about our day, sharing stories and laughter. Her company was a welcome reprieve from the solitude that often characterized my days. The playground, though often empty and quiet, was a place of growth and self-discovery. It was where I honed my skills, faced my challenges, and found moments of respite. The solitude was both a trial and a teacher, shaping me into the person I was becoming. In the quiet of the playground, I learned to embrace my solitude as a part of my journey. The isolation was not merely a barrier but a catalyst for growth, a space where I could confront my fears and refine my abilities. And amidst the challenges, the presence of those like Hinata provided a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the loneliest moments, there was always a chance for connection and understanding. As I walked away from the playground, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The struggles I faced were a part of my path, shaping me into someone stronger and more determined. And with each step, I carried with me the lessons learned in the solitude of the playground, knowing that even in isolation, there was always room for growth and hope. Chapter 5, Meeting Sasuke. The early morning sun filtered through the leaves of the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground as I walked towards the academy. It was another day of classes, and though my routine was familiar, today held a sense of anticipation. The academy was a place of learning, but for me, it was also a place of observation. I was keenly aware of my surroundings, always on the lookout for something, or someone, that might break the monotony of my solitary existence. As I approached the entrance, I saw a familiar figure standing near the doorway. He was leaning against the wall, his dark hair falling in unruly spikes, and his expression set in a serious, almost brooding gaze. It was Sasuke Uchiha, a boy whose presence seemed to command attention. Even from a distance, his aura was palpable, one of reserved intensity and quiet strength. Sasuke was unlike most of the other children at the academy. While they chattered and joked, he remained aloof, his demeanor more reflective and distant. There was a gravity to him that intrigued me. He was a part of the Uchiha clan, one of the most respected families in Konoha, known for their prowess and their history. The whispers about the Uchiha were as frequent as those about me, though their nature was different. Where my whispers were tinged with fear and suspicion, Sasuke's were marked by respect and awe. I watched him from afar, curiosity piqued. Despite his apparent isolation, there was something magnetic about him. I could see the other students glancing his way, their expressions a mix of admiration and hesitation. Sasuke seemed to exist in a world apart from the rest of us, his presence both enigmatic and compelling. As the bell rang, signaling the start of the day, I gathered my things and made my way into the classroom. Sasuke was already seated at his desk, his gaze fixed on the window, lost in thought. I found a seat a few rows behind him, my eyes occasionally drifting towards him as the lessons began. Throughout the morning, Sasuke's demeanor remained unchanged. He answered questions with a precision that spoke of his skill and intelligence, but he did so with a detached air. It was clear he was not interested in engaging with the others, and this only deepened my curiosity about him. During the lunch break, I ventured to the courtyard, where students gathered to eat and socialize. Sasuke was again alone, seated beneath a tree, eating his meal in solitude. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should approach him. The thought of striking up a conversation with someone who seemed so distant was daunting. Yet, there was something about him that drew me in, a feeling that perhaps we might understand each other in ways others could not. With a deep breath, I approached him, clutching my lunchbox. "Hi, Sasuke," I said, trying to sound casual, despite the flutter of nerves in my stomach. "Do you mind if I sit here?" He looked up, his dark eyes meeting mine with a mix of surprise and curiosity. There was a brief pause, a moment where I wondered if he would dismiss me. Then, he nodded, a small gesture that indicated I could sit. I settled down beside him, trying to appear nonchalant as I unwrapped my lunch. Sasuke continued to eat, his gaze occasionally flickering towards me. The silence between us was thick, but not uncomfortable. It was clear that Sasuke was not inclined to speak much, but I didn't mind. I was content simply being in his presence, observing him as he seemed to observe the world with a contemplative air. As we ate, I decided to break the silence. "You seem to spend a lot of time alone," I said, trying to sound friendly. "Is that something you like, or is it just how things are?" Sasuke looked at me, his expression thoughtful. "It's just how things are," he replied, his voice low but clear. "I don't have much in common with the others." I nodded, understanding more than he might have realized. "I get that. Sometimes it feels like people don't really understand you, no matter how much you try to fit in. Sasuke's gaze softened ever so slightly, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, perhaps a hint of empathy or understanding. It was a fleeting connection, but it was enough to spark a sense of kinship. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch and the return to classes. As we stood up, Sasuke's eyes met mine once more. "Thanks for sitting with me," he said, his tone a touch softer than before. "It was nice." I smiled, feeling a small surge of warmth at his words. "Anytime, Sasuke. See you in class." As we parted ways, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Sasuke's presence was enigmatic and intriguing, and despite his apparent aloofness, there was a connection that I hoped would grow. The brief interaction had been a glimpse into a world beyond the solitude that often defined my days. The encounter with Sasuke had been a small but significant moment, a reminder that even in a village where I often felt isolated, there were possibilities for connection and understanding. And as I walked back to the classroom, I carried with me the hope that this newfound connection might pave the way for deeper bonds and a greater sense of belonging. Chapter 6, Kurama's Wisdom. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, casting a twilight glow over the village of Konoha. Most of the village had settled into the quiet of the evening, but for me, the day was far from over. I had retreated to my usual spot. A secluded corner behind the academy where I could be alone with my thoughts and my ever-present companion, Kurama. As I sat against the cool bark of a tree, I closed my eyes and let the familiar warmth of Kurama's chakra envelop me. The massive fox's presence was a constant comfort and a source of profound guidance, even though his way of communicating was far from conventional. Tonight, however, I felt the need for his wisdom more than ever. "Kurama," I said softly, my voice breaking the silence. "Can we talk? I'm feeling a bit lost right now." A deep, rumbling growl reverberated through the air, and I felt the familiar shift in the chakra flow as Kurama manifested in his usual form within the confines of my mind. His crimson eyes, glowing with a fierce yet benevolent light, met mine through the inner realm of my consciousness. "What's troubling you, little one?" His voice was a low, resonant rumble, filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. "I'm struggling with fitting in," I confessed, my voice tinged with frustration. "It feels like no matter what I do, I'm always on the outside looking in. And my powers, they're so overwhelming. I don't know how to control them properly or use them without drawing unwanted attention." Kurama's expression softened, and he settled down with a thoughtful sigh. "You have a unique burden, Naruto. Being an Otsutsuki and a Jinchuriki means you possess extraordinary powers, but it also means you have to navigate a world that doesn't always understand or accept you." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I know. But it's hard. I want to fit in, to be part of something, but it feels like my powers keep pushing me further away." Kurama's eyes glowed with a thoughtful intensity. "Your powers are a part of who you are, and they will always be a significant aspect of your life. But fitting in doesn't mean hiding who you are. It means finding a way to balance your strengths with the world around you." I looked up at him, curiosity piqued. "How do I do that? How do I control my powers and still be myself?" He paused, considering his words carefully. "Control starts with understanding. Your abilities are vast and complex, and mastering them requires patience and practice. But it also requires you to accept yourself and your heritage. You cannot change who you are, but you can learn to wield your power with purpose and restraint." I listened intently, absorbing every word. "Purpose and restraint? Can you explain what you mean?" Kurama's eyes met mine with a glimmer of insight. "Purpose is about knowing why you use your powers. They are not just tools of strength, they are a reflection of your will and your goals. When you act with purpose, your powers become an extension of your desires and ambitions, not just a source of fear or awe." "And restraint?" I asked, eager to understand. "Restraint," Kurama said, "is about knowing when and how to use your powers. It's not just about holding back, but about using your strength wisely and appropriately. It's about making decisions that align with your values and the impact you want to have on the world. I contemplated his words, feeling a sense of clarity begin to emerge. So, I need to understand my goals and act with intention, while also being mindful of how and when I use my powers. Exactly, Kurama affirmed. And remember, it's also important to find allies who understand you and can support you. The connections you make with others can help you navigate your challenges and provide you with the strength to face them. The idea of finding allies resonated deeply with me. It was a comforting thought, one that gave me hope for the future. Do you think there are people out there who will understand me? Who will accept me for who I am? Kurama's eyes softened with a hint of encouragement. There are always those who will see beyond the surface and understand the true essence of who you are. It might take time and it may not always be easy, but it's worth seeking out those connections. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of resolve. Kurama's wisdom had provided me with a new perspective, one that offered hope and direction. Thank you, Kurama. I feel like I have a better understanding of what I need to do. Kurama's form began to fade, his presence receding back into the depths of my mind. You're welcome, Naruto. Remember, you are never alone in your journey. Embrace your powers, act with purpose, and seek out those who can walk with you. As Kurama's presence vanished, I felt a renewed sense of determination. His guidance had given me the clarity I needed to move forward, and I was ready to face the challenges ahead with a newfound sense of purpose. With a final glance at the twilight sky, I stood up and prepared to leave the secluded spot. The path ahead was still uncertain, but with Kurama's wisdom guiding me, I felt more prepared to navigate the complexities of my world. The journey would be challenging, but I was ready to embrace it with strength and conviction. Chapter 7: The Lonely Girl's Dream. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over Konoha. The village below was silent, its usual hustle replaced by the tranquil calm of night. For most, it was a time for rest, but for me, it was often a time for reflection and training. Tonight was no different. As the moonlight filtered through the trees, I found myself once again in the quiet of my secluded training ground. I had set up a makeshift training area in a small clearing on the edge of the forest. The space was familiar to me, a place where I could push my limits without fear of judgment or interruption. The air was crisp, and the only sounds were the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of night creatures. With my training gear in place, I began my routine. The gentle hum of chakra flowed through me as I focused on my exercises. My movements were deliberate, each action a step towards mastering my abilities. My Otsutsuki heritage granted me extraordinary powers, but with that power came a responsibility to control and refine it. The challenge was not only in harnessing my strength, but also in finding a way to integrate it into my daily life. As I practiced, my mind wandered to the dreams and aspirations that fueled my determination. The loneliness I often felt was a driving force behind my relentless pursuit of excellence. I wanted to be accepted, to prove my worth not only to myself, but also to the people around me. I wanted to show them that I was more than just the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails and a member of the Otsutsuki clan. I wanted to be seen as an individual with value and potential. In the midst of my training, I allowed my thoughts to drift back to my earlier days at the academy. The isolation I felt was a constant reminder of the gap between me and the others. I remembered the whispers and the sidelong glances, the way some students avoided me or treated me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. It was a stark contrast to the camaraderie I observed among my peers. But even in those moments of solitude, I found solace in my dreams. I dreamed of a future where I was not only accepted but valued for who I was. I envisioned a day when I could stand alongside my peers as equals, where my abilities and my heart would be recognized and appreciated. It was this dream that fueled my nightly training, pushing me to strive for perfection and to overcome the barriers that separated me from others. As I continued my training, my thoughts turned to Sasuke. Our brief interaction during lunch had been a small but significant step. His aloofness had intrigued me, and the brief exchange we had shared left a lingering impression. I wondered if he, too, felt the weight of expectations and isolation. Perhaps he, like me, was searching for a place where he could truly belong. With renewed focus, I intensified my training, channeling my thoughts and emotions into every movement. I practiced controlling my chakra with precision, performing techniques that would help me improve my skills and prove my worth. Each successful execution of a technique was a small victory, a step closer to achieving my dreams. As the hours passed, my training sessions became more challenging. I pushed myself to the limits, determined to make every moment count. My body ached from the exertion, but my spirit remained unyielding. The dreams that drove me were a source of strength, a beacon guiding me through the struggles and doubts that accompanied my journey. Eventually, the first light of dawn began to break through the trees, casting a golden hue over the clearing. Exhausted but satisfied, I sat down to catch my breath. The peaceful silence of the early morning was a stark contrast to the intensity of my training, and it provided a moment of calm reflection. I looked out over the village, the quiet beauty of the morning a reminder of the world I was striving to be a part of. My dreams of acceptance and recognition were not merely aspirations, they were a fundamental part of who I was. They drove me to overcome the obstacles in my path and to continue fighting for a place where I could belong. As I gathered my gear and prepared to head back to the village, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My training had not only strengthened my abilities, but also reaffirmed my resolve to pursue my dreams. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I was ready to face it with determination and hope. With the sun rising in the sky, I made my way back to the village, ready to embrace the challenges of a new day. My dreams were my guiding light, and with each step, I moved closer to the future I envisioned, a future where I would be accepted and valued for who I truly was. Chapter 8: Silent Observations. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the village of Konoha. From a quiet vantage point atop a gently sloping hill, I watched as the village bustled with its usual late afternoon activity. My gaze, however, was focused on one particular figure, Sasuke Uchiha. It had become a routine for me to observe Sasuke from a distance, not out of any sense of intrusion, but because I was intrigued by him. There was something about the way he carried himself, his aloofness, his distance from others, that drew my attention. It was a mixture of curiosity and empathy that kept me watching, trying to understand the enigma that was Sasuke. Sasuke was practicing alone in a secluded area near the training grounds. His movements were precise and deliberate, a reflection of his intense focus. The way he executed each jutsu was smooth and controlled, but there was an underlying tension in his posture, a sense of burden that was hard to miss. His usually calm demeanor was tinged with something more, perhaps it was frustration or sorrow, but it was clear that he was wrestling with emotions beneath the surface. As I observed him, I couldn't help but reflect on my own experiences. Sasuke's aloofness mirrored the isolation I often felt, though our situations were different. I could sense a depth to his struggles, a complexity that went beyond mere disinterest. It was as if he was fighting an internal battle that was not immediately visible to those around him. I recalled the few interactions I'd had with him, moments where our paths had crossed in the academy or during missions. He was always distant, his responses brief and his expressions guarded. Despite his cool exterior, I sensed a profound loneliness in him, a sense that he was burdened by expectations and a past he couldn't escape. Tonight, as I watched him practice, I saw glimpses of the pain he carried. Each strike and movement was powerful, yet there was an underlying sense of melancholy in his eyes. The way he furrowed his brow and clenched his fists spoke of an inner struggle, a fight against memories and feelings that were deeply personal. Sasuke's focus was unwavering as he practiced, his attention fixed on his techniques. Yet, even in his diligence, there was a sense of detachment, a feeling that he was pushing himself not just to improve but to escape something he couldn't fully articulate. It was both fascinating and heartbreaking to witness. I wanted to reach out, to offer some form of understanding or support, but I knew that my presence would only make things more complicated. Sasuke's aloofness was a barrier I had yet to find a way past. I could only observe from afar, hoping that someday there might be an opportunity to bridge the gap between us. The training session drew to a close, and Sasuke began to cool down. He wiped the sweat from his brow and stood silently, staring out at the village below. The distant look in his eyes was a stark reminder of the weight he carried. I felt a pang of sympathy, recognizing the silent burden he bore and the isolation he seemed to endure. As the sun set and the sky turned to shades of orange and pink, Sasuke finally moved towards the village. I remained where I was, hidden among the trees, feeling a mixture of admiration and sadness. Sasuke's struggles were palpable, and his loneliness was a reflection of the battles he fought both within himself and in the world around him. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the observation settle in my heart. Sasuke's journey was one of many complexities, and while I could only watch from a distance, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Understanding Sasuke, and perhaps connecting with him, was becoming more important to me. Our paths were intertwined by the struggles we faced, and I hoped that, in time, there might be a way to share in each other's burdens and find solace in our shared experiences. As the night fell and the village lights began to twinkle below, I turned away from the hill, my mind filled with thoughts of Sasuke and the silent observations I had made. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to find a way to bridge the gap between us, to offer support and understanding, even if it meant navigating the complexities of his emotional landscape from afar. With a final glance at the village, I began my descent, ready to face the challenges of my own path and hopeful for the day when our paths might intersect in a more meaningful way. Chapter 9: Brief Encounters. The days passed in a blur of training and routine, with moments of solitude interrupted only by the brief encounters I had with Sasuke. Each interaction, though fleeting, was a window into his world, a world I was trying to understand and, perhaps, connect with. Encounter 1: The Academy Hallway. It was a typical day at the academy. The corridors were filled with the usual noise of students chatting and laughing. I was on my way to my next class when I spotted Sasuke leaning against the wall, his eyes closed as he seemed lost in thought. I hesitated for a moment before gathering my courage and approaching him. "Hey, Sasuke," I said, trying to sound casual. "You've been working really hard lately. Do you want to talk about it?" Sasuke's eyes opened slowly, and he regarded me with a glance that was both distant and guarded. "There's nothing to talk about," he replied curtly. "I'm just focused on my training." I nodded, feeling a pang of disappointment. "Well, if you ever want to talk, I'm here." Without another word, Sasuke turned his attention back to the hallway, his posture rigid. I stood there for a moment longer before reluctantly walking away, the brief encounter leaving me with a sense of unresolved tension. Encounter 2: The Training Grounds. A few days later, I found myself at the training grounds, working on my techniques with determined focus. The sound of footsteps approaching drew my attention, and I turned to see Sasuke arriving, his expression as unreadable as ever. He began his own training nearby, his movements sharp and precise. I watched him from a distance, feeling a mix of admiration and sadness. After a while, I took a deep breath and approached him, my heart pounding. "Sasuke," I called out as I neared him. "I noticed you've been pushing yourself hard. Maybe you could use a break?" Sasuke paused, his eyes meeting mine with a flicker of surprise. "I don't need a break," he said firmly. "I need to improve." I took a tentative step closer. "Sometimes pushing yourself too hard can be counterproductive. Maybe we could train together or help each other out." He studied me for a moment, his expression softening slightly, but only for a brief instant. "Thanks, but I prefer to train alone," he replied. "It's more effective that way." I felt a wave of frustration, but forced a smile. "Alright, if you change your mind, I'm around." Sasuke nodded curtly and returned to his training, leaving me to watch him from the sidelines. The brief exchange was a small step, but it was clear that reaching him was not going to be easy. Encounter 3: The Village Square. One afternoon, while walking through the village square, I spotted Sasuke standing near a food stall, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a hint of weariness. I decided to seize the opportunity and approached him. "Hey, Sasuke. Buying lunch?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. Sasuke looked up, his expression neutral. "Yeah, just grabbing something quick." I took a deep breath, trying to keep the conversation going. You know, sometimes taking a break and enjoying a good meal can be a nice change of pace. You don't always have to be so focused on training. He looked at me for a moment, and I could see the slightest hint of a frown on his face. I don't have time for breaks, he said, his voice carrying an edge of irritation. Before I could respond, Sasuke turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the village square with a sense of frustration. It was clear that my attempts to reach out were met with resistance, and I felt the weight of the challenge ahead. Encounter 4, the Academy Rooftop. One evening, as the sun began to set, I climbed up to the Academy rooftop, seeking a moment of peace and reflection. To my surprise, I found Sasuke already there, sitting on the edge and staring out at the village below. I hesitated for a moment before approaching him, my heart racing. Mind if I join you? Sasuke glanced at me, his eyes softening just slightly. Sure, if you want. I sat down beside him, taking in the view of the village. The silence between us was heavy, but I decided to break it. You know, I've been thinking about what you said. About needing to improve. Sasuke's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. What about it? I just think that there's more to life than just training, I said quietly. Sometimes, taking time for yourself and connecting with others can be just as important. He didn't respond immediately, and I could sense that he was processing my words. After a few moments, he finally spoke. Maybe you're right. But it's hard to see things that way when there's so much at stake. I nodded, understanding the weight of his words. I get it. I'm just here to offer support, if you need it. Sasuke turned to look at me, his expression softer than before. Thanks, Naruto. I appreciate it. With that, the conversation ended, and we sat in silence, each lost in our thoughts. The brief moment of connection was fleeting, but it was a small victory in the ongoing challenge of reaching out to Sasuke. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I stood up and prepared to leave. The encounters had been short and often marked by his coldness, but they were steps towards understanding him better. I hoped that, in time, our interactions would become more meaningful and that I could bridge the gap between us. With a final glance at Sasuke, I descended from the rooftop, carrying with me the hope that our paths would continue to intersect and that our brief encounters would eventually lead to a deeper connection. Chapter 10, Shadows of the Past. The village of Konoha was bathed in the gentle light of the setting sun, casting long shadows that stretched across the streets and alleyways. I walked through the village with a sense of purpose, my mind preoccupied with the enigmatic Sasuke Uchiha. The more I observed him, the more I felt a growing curiosity about the reasons behind his aloofness. Today, I hope to find some answers. My opportunity came when I overheard a conversation among a group of older villagers while passing by the marketplace. They were discussing the Uchiha clan and the recent changes in the village. Their words caught my attention, and I lingered nearby, trying to piece together what I could. The Uchiha clan was once one of the most respected clans in Konoha, one of the villagers said. But after the massacre, everything changed. Sasuke is one of the few left, and he's been carrying that weight ever since. The mention of the massacre struck a chord with me. I had heard rumors about it but had never fully understood what had happened. Intrigued and deeply concerned for Sasuke, I decided to dig deeper. I approached one of the villagers who seemed more knowledgeable about the clan's history. Excuse me, I said politely, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Can you tell me more about what happened to the Uchiha clan? The villager looked at me with a hint of surprise, but nodded. It's a difficult topic, but I suppose you have a right to know. The Uchiha clan was one of the founding clans of Konoha, known for their powerful Sharingan and their role in maintaining peace in the village. But a few years ago, there was a tragic event known as the Uchiha massacre. I listened intently as the villager continued. It was carried out by Itachi Uchiha, Sasuke's older brother. Itachi was ordered to eliminate the entire clan by the higher-ups in the village, to prevent a coup that the Uchiha were planning. The massacre left Sasuke as one of the few survivors, and it has had a profound impact on him. The words resonated deeply within me. I began to understand the burden Sasuke carried, his aloofness, his distance from others. It was not just a matter of personal choice, but a response to a devastating loss that had shaped his life. Feeling a mix of sadness and determination, I decided to seek out more information and find a way to offer support to Sasuke. I headed to the Uchiha clan's old district, where the remnants of their former glory still stood. The area was eerily quiet, the once vibrant clan district now a shadow of its former self. As I wandered through the empty streets and abandoned homes, I felt a deep sense of empathy for Sasuke. The silence of the district seemed to echo the loneliness he must have felt. I could imagine him walking these same streets, grappling with the weight of his family's tragic history. My thoughts were interrupted when I noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was Sasuke, heading towards the district as well. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to approach him. But my concern for him outweighed my hesitation. I waited until he was close enough to notice me, then took a deep breath and called out. "Sasuke." He stopped and turned to face me, his expression guarded but not entirely unfriendly. "What are you doing here, Naruto?" I took a step closer, trying to convey my sincerity. I was learning about the Uchiha clan's history and the tragedy that happened. "I didn't realize how much you've been through." Sasuke's eyes flickered with surprise, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of vulnerability. "It's not something I like to talk about," he said quietly. "It's a part of my past that I've been trying to move beyond." "I understand," I said gently. "But I want you to know that you don't have to face it alone. If you ever need someone to talk to or just someone to be there, I'm here." Sasuke studied me for a moment, and I could see the internal struggle in his eyes. The walls he had built around himself were slowly starting to crack, and I hoped that my words had made a difference. "I appreciate that," he replied, his voice softening. "It's just hard for me to open up." "I know," I said, offering a reassuring smile. "But sometimes, it's okay to let others in. We don't have to carry our burdens alone." Sasuke nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the empty district. "Thanks, Naruto. I'll keep that in mind." With that, Sasuke turned and began walking away, leaving me with a sense of hope. The brief conversation had been a small step towards understanding and connecting with him. I felt a renewed determination to support Sasuke and help him find a way to heal from the shadows of his past. As I watched him disappear into the distance, I reflected on the revelations of the day. The burden of the Uchiha massacre was a heavy one, but it was a burden that Sasuke didn't have to carry alone. My understanding of his past had deepened, and I was committed to being a source of support for him, no matter how challenging the journey ahead might be. With a final glance at the quiet district, I turned and headed back towards the heart of the village, ready to face the challenges and opportunities that awaited in my continued efforts to connect with Sasuke and offer him the understanding and support he needed. Chapter 11, Kurama's Comfort. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting a silvery glow over Konoha. The village was quiet, with most of its inhabitants settled into their nightly routines. But for me, sleep was elusive. I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions I couldn't seem to quiet. The day had been challenging, filled with new insights into Sasuke's painful past. My heart ached for him, but I couldn't deny that the weight of his struggles had also started to press heavily on my own shoulders. The more I learned about his past, the more I felt the need to understand and support him, even if it meant delving into my own vulnerabilities. I tossed and turned, unable to find a comfortable position. Finally, I let out a frustrated sigh and decided to seek solace from the one constant presence in my life, Kurama. I quietly made my way to the hidden chamber where Kurama resided, the place where I found comfort and wisdom. The chamber was dimly lit, with only the faint glow of the chakra ceiling array illuminating the space. I approached the massive cage that contained Kurama, my heart heavy with the burdens I carried. The enormous fox's eyes glowed with a gentle light as he noticed my approach. "What's troubling you, Naruto?" Kurama's voice resonated softly within the chamber, filled with a mixture of concern and curiosity. I sat down cross-legged in front of the cage, feeling the cool air of the chamber against my skin. It's been a tough day, I admitted, my voice tinged with exhaustion. I've learned so much about Sasuke's past and the pain he's been through. It's making me question if I'm doing enough to help him. Kurama's eyes softened with understanding. You're carrying a lot on your shoulders, Naruto. It's natural to feel overwhelmed when you see someone you care about struggling. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. It's just, I feel like I'm not making a difference. I want to be there for him, but I'm afraid that I'm only adding to his burden. Kurama's voice took on a soothing tone. Sometimes, just being there for someone, even if you can't solve their problems, is more valuable than you might realize. It's about showing them that they're not alone, that someone cares. I closed my eyes, trying to absorb his words. But what if I'm not enough? What if my efforts aren't enough to reach him or make him feel better? Kurama let out a low, rumbling sigh. No one can guarantee that their efforts will always make things better. But your intentions are pure, and your heart is in the right place. That's what matters. You can't control everything, but you can control how you choose to be there for him. I took a deep breath, letting Kurama's words sink in. The weight of my doubts and fears seemed to lighten, if only slightly. You're right. I guess I just need to keep trying and not lose hope. Kurama's eyes glowed with a reassuring light. Exactly. And remember, you're not alone in this. I'm here to support you, and so are the people who care about you. Don't be afraid to lean on others when you need it. I smiled faintly, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Thank you, Kurama. I don't know what I'd do without you. Kurama's gaze softened even further. You don't have to worry about that. We're in this together, and we'll face whatever comes our way as a team. I sat in silence for a moment, letting the comfort of Kurama's presence envelop me. The night seemed a little less daunting now, and the burden of my worries felt a bit lighter. With Kurama's support, I felt a renewed sense of determination and clarity. I'll keep trying, I said quietly, my voice filled with resolve. I'll do my best for Sasuke and for everyone who needs me. Kurama's eyes sparkled with approval. That's all anyone can ask of you. And I believe in you, Naruto. You have the strength and the heart to make a difference. As the conversation came to an end, I slowly stood up, feeling a sense of calm that had eluded me earlier. The moonlight filtered into the chamber, casting a gentle glow on Kurama's cage. I gave one last grateful look to my friend before turning to leave. With a renewed sense of purpose and comfort, I headed back to my room, ready to face the challenges of tomorrow with a heart full of hope and a spirit fortified by Kurama's unwavering support. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew that with Kurama by my side, I could find the strength to continue my journey and make a difference in the lives of those I cared about. Chapter 12, The Burden Shared. The tranquil stillness of the night enveloped the village, and the moonlight gently streamed through my window. I sat on the edge of my bed, lost in thought. The day had been challenging, and the weight of my emotions felt heavier than usual. I could feel the isolation creeping back into my heart, and I needed to talk to someone who truly understood. I made my way to the hidden chamber where Kurama resided, the place where I found solace and wisdom. As I approached the massive cage that contained him, I could feel the familiar presence of the Nine Tails, a source of both strength and comfort. Kurama's eyes glowed softly as I entered the chamber. You've been quiet tonight, Naruto. Something on your mind? I sat down in front of the cage, my posture reflecting the weariness I felt. It's been a rough day, I admitted, my voice carrying a hint of frustration. I've been thinking a lot about how alone I feel sometimes. It's hard to always put on a brave face when I feel like nobody really understands what I'm going through. Kurama's eyes softened with empathy. You've always carried a heavy burden as a Jinchuriki. It's understandable that you'd feel isolated at times. I sighed deeply, trying to find the right words to express my feelings. It's not just about being a Jinchuriki. It's also about how different I am from everyone else. I've always felt like an outsider in my own village, like I'm constantly fighting to prove my worth. It's exhausting, and sometimes I just don't know how to handle it. Kurama's gaze was steady and contemplative. It's never easy to carry such a burden, especially when it feels like the world is against you. But you have to remember that you're not alone in this. Even when it feels like nobody understands, I'm here for you. I looked up at Kurama, searching for comfort in his words. Sometimes, I wish I could be normal, that I could just be like everyone else. I want to belong, to have friends who see me for who I am, not just as the Jinchuriki or the girl with the Otsutsuki heritage. Kurama's expression softened further, his voice gentle. Normal is a relative concept, Naruto. What you see as different, others may see as unique and special. Your struggles have shaped you into a person with immense strength and compassion. It's those very qualities that make you who you are. I nodded, taking in Kurama's words. I know you're right. It's just hard to see that sometimes. It feels like the more I try to fit in, the more I stand out. And there are moments when I just want to give up. Kurama's voice was reassuring and firm. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed, and it's okay to have moments of weakness. But don't let those moments define you. You have the strength to overcome these feelings, and you have people who care about you, even if it doesn't always feel that way. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, a mixture of relief and sadness. I'm grateful for your support, Kurama. I don't know what I'd do without you. Kurama's eyes glowed warmly, reflecting a sense of pride and affection. You're stronger than you realize, Naruto. And even when it feels like the world is closing in on you, remember that you have a purpose and a place in this world. You're not defined by your burdens, but by how you face them. I took a deep breath, letting Kurama's words sink in. The weight of my isolation and the burden of being a Jinchuriki still felt heavy, but Kurama's comfort provided a sense of clarity. I wasn't alone in this fight, and I had the strength to continue moving forward. Thank you, Kurama, I said softly, my voice filled with gratitude. I'll keep trying to be strong and find my place. And I'll remember that I'm not alone. Kurama's eyes sparkled with approval. That's the spirit, Naruto. Keep moving forward, and don't be afraid to lean on those who care about you. Together, we'll face whatever comes our way. As I stood up and prepared to leave the chamber, I felt a renewed sense of resolve. The burdens of isolation and the challenges of being a Jinchuriki were still present, but with Kurama's support and my own inner strength, I knew I could face them. I left the chamber with a lighter heart, ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities that awaited me, knowing that I had the strength to overcome them and the support of those who cared about me. Chapter 13, The Unseen Connection. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow across Konoha. The village was bustling with activity as its inhabitants went about their evening routines. Despite the lively atmosphere outside, I found myself lost in thought, my mind wandering to a place I hadn't fully understood yet. I had noticed it for some time now, a subtle, almost imperceptible connection with Sasuke. Even though our interactions were few and far between, I felt an inexplicable pull towards him. It was as if there was an invisible thread linking our fates, drawing us together in ways I couldn't quite explain. Today was no different. I watched Sasuke from a distance as he trained, his movements fluid and precise. There was an intensity to his focus, a dedication that spoke volumes about the burden he carried and the goals he set for himself. As I observed him, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to our connection than just chance. I decided to visit the training grounds where Sasuke was practicing. It was a place where we had crossed paths before, and I hoped that maybe today would offer some insight into this strange connection I felt. As I approached the training grounds, I noticed Sasuke in the midst of a particularly grueling exercise. His brow was furrowed in concentration, and beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. He seemed completely absorbed in his training, a stark contrast to my own contemplative mood. I stood at a distance, watching quietly. I wanted to respect his space, but also needed to understand this feeling that tugged at me. It wasn't just curiosity or admiration, it felt like a deeper, more profound connection. After a while, Sasuke completed his training and took a moment to catch his breath. I hesitated before stepping closer, unsure of how to approach him without intruding. Eventually, I mustered up the courage and called out softly, "Hey, Sasuke." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine with a hint of surprise. Naruto. What are you doing here? I felt my heart race a bit, but I managed a small smile. Just passing by. I've been watching you train. You're really focused. Sasuke nodded, seemingly appreciative of the acknowledgement. Training is the only way to get stronger. I have a lot to work on. There was a brief silence between us, filled with an unspoken tension. I could sense that Sasuke was guarded, and I wondered if he could feel the same subtle connection I did. It was as if he was aware of it but wasn't quite ready to acknowledge it. I decided to take a step forward, hoping to bridge the gap between us. I know things haven't always been easy for you. I can see how hard you work and how much you're trying to overcome. Sasuke's eyes flickered with something, perhaps surprise or curiosity. You've been paying attention to me? I nodded, feeling a bit self-conscious. I guess I have. I've noticed that we both have our struggles, and I wanted to reach out. I know it might seem strange, but I feel like there's something connecting us, even if it's not obvious. Sasuke looked at me, his expression softening slightly. You're not the only one who's been feeling something. I've sensed it too, but I haven't figured out what it means. His admission surprised me, and I felt a surge of relief mixed with curiosity. Do you think it's something we should explore? Maybe it's not just in our heads. Sasuke considered my words for a moment before responding. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm willing to see where it leads. If you're open to it, we can try to understand it together. I felt a sense of hope rise within me. The idea of exploring this connection with Sasuke was both exciting and intimidating. But I was ready to take the first step. I'd like that. Maybe we can figure this out and see where it takes us. Sasuke nodded, a faint smile forming on his lips. All right. Let's see where this connection leads. As we stood there, the warm glow of the setting sun enveloped us, casting a serene light over the training grounds. The connection I felt with Sasuke was still subtle and undefined, but it was real and significant. I had taken a step towards understanding it, and for the first time, I felt a sense of anticipation about what the future might hold. The journey to uncover this unseen connection had just begun, and while the path ahead was uncertain, I was ready to face it with Sasuke by my side. The bond we shared might be mysterious, but it was one that I was determined to explore and nurture, no matter where it led. Chapter 14, Hope in the Dark. The night had settled over Konoha, casting its usual blanket of quiet across the village. The stars twinkled brightly in the sky, offering a semblance of light in the otherwise darkened world. It was during these quiet moments that I often found myself reflecting on the day's events and the feelings I carried within me. Tonight was no different, but something felt different in the air. There was a spark of hope that had ignited within me, fueled by the recent conversations and moments shared with Sasuke. I had sensed a shift, a possibility that the connection we had discovered could lead to something more meaningful, something that could fill the void of isolation I had long felt. I wandered through the village streets, enjoying the peaceful solitude and the cool night breeze. My thoughts were centered on the interactions I had with Sasuke and the small steps we had taken towards understanding our connection. Despite the challenges and uncertainties, a glimmer of hope had begun to take root in my heart. As I walked, I came upon a familiar spot, a small park with a tranquil pond reflecting the moonlight. It was one of my favorite places to think, and I decided to sit on a bench by the water's edge. I needed a moment to gather my thoughts and contemplate the changes in my life. I took a deep breath, letting the serenity of the park wash over me. The gentle lapping of the water against the shore was soothing, and the cool night air felt refreshing against my skin. I closed my eyes and let the peace of the moment envelop me. My thoughts drifted to Sasuke and the tentative steps we had taken towards each other. Our conversations had been sparse, but they had left a lasting impression. Sasuke's willingness to explore the connection between us had given me a sense of optimism that I hadn't felt in a long time. I remembered the way Sasuke had looked at me with that hint of curiosity and openness. It was a look that spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement of the possibility of friendship. It was in those brief moments that I had glimpsed a future where I wasn't alone, where I could build meaningful connections with others. Just as I was lost in my thoughts, I heard the soft crunch of footsteps approaching. I turned to see Sasuke walking towards me, his face illuminated by the moonlight. He looked as contemplative as I felt, and a sense of warmth spread through me at the sight of him. Sasuke approached the bench and sat down next to me. "I didn't expect to find you here," he said softly, his voice carrying a hint of curiosity. I offered him a small smile, feeling a sense of comfort in his presence. "I come here often when I need to think. It's a peaceful place." Sasuke nodded, his gaze shifting to the pond. "It is peaceful. I've been thinking a lot too. About what we talked about and the connection we have." I could sense the sincerity in his voice, and it bolstered the hope that had been growing inside me. "I've been thinking about it too. I believe that we have something special here. It's not just in our heads, it feels real." Sasuke looked at me, his eyes reflecting a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I agree. It's strange, but it's a good kind of strange. I've been feeling more hopeful lately, like there's a chance for something more." His words resonated with me, and I felt a sense of relief and excitement. "Me too. I've always struggled with feeling isolated, but meeting you and having these conversations has given me hope. Maybe we can build something meaningful together, even if it starts small." Sasuke's expression softened, and he offered me a small, genuine smile. "I'd like that. We don't have to rush or force anything. We can take it one step at a time and see where it leads." The warmth of Sasuke's smile and the sincerity in his words filled me with a renewed sense of hope. For the first time in a long while, I felt that the possibility of friendship and connection was within reach. The darkness of isolation was beginning to lift, replaced by the light of hope and the promise of new beginnings. As we sat together in the quiet park, the night felt less daunting, and the future seemed a bit brighter. The connection between us was still evolving, but it was a connection that brought with it a sense of possibility and optimism. I was ready to embrace this new chapter, to build something meaningful with Sasuke and to cherish the hope that had emerged from the darkness. With Sasuke by my side, I felt a sense of courage and determination. The journey ahead was uncertain, but the promise of friendship and the potential for something more made it a journey worth taking. Together, we would face whatever challenges came our way and discover the true depth of the connection we shared. Chapter 15: The Watchful Eye. The morning sun bathed Konoha in its golden light, casting long shadows across the village as it awakened from its slumber. It was a new day, and while the world around me bustled with energy, I found myself once again drawn to the quiet space of the training grounds where Sasuke spent much of his time. I approached the familiar clearing with a sense of anticipation and curiosity. My connection with Sasuke had grown more significant, and I found myself increasingly compelled to understand him better. I had witnessed his struggles and his dedication, and it intrigued me how our lives seemed to intertwine despite our limited interactions. As I arrived at the edge of the training grounds, I spotted Sasuke already immersed in his morning routine. He was performing a series of intense drills, his movements precise and controlled. It was clear that he approached his training with the same intensity he applied to everything else in his life. The way he moved, the focus in his eyes, it was all mesmerizing. I decided to stay hidden behind a nearby tree, giving Sasuke the space to train while I observed from afar. I knew that my presence could be distracting, and I wanted to respect his focus. From this vantage point, I could see the sweat glistening on his brow and the determination etched into his features. As I watched, I couldn't help but feel a mix of empathy and curiosity. Sasuke's dedication was evident, but so was the weight of his past. The aloofness he projected was a shield, a way to protect himself from the pain and loss he had endured. It made me wonder about the depth of his inner struggles and the reasons behind his solitary demeanor. I recalled our previous conversations, the moments when he had opened up to me about his connection and his own feelings of isolation. It was a vulnerability he rarely showed to others, and it had created a bond between us that I felt compelled to nurture. Despite the distance between us, I felt a growing sense of connection and understanding. Sasuke's actions spoke volumes about his character, revealing a man who was driven by more than just personal goals. His training was a form of therapy, a way to channel his emotions and find purpose in the midst of his struggles. I continued to watch as Sasuke transitioned from one exercise to another, his movements fluid and deliberate. There was a rhythm to his training, a grace that came from years of practice and dedication. It was both inspiring and humbling to witness his commitment. Eventually, Sasuke took a break, sitting down on a nearby rock to catch his breath. His gaze was distant, and for a moment, he seemed lost in thought. I saw this as an opportunity to approach him, to offer a gesture of support that might bridge the gap between us. I stepped out from behind the tree, my footsteps soft against the ground. "Hey, Sasuke," I called out gently, trying not to startle him. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of surprise and guarded curiosity. "Naruto. I didn't expect to see you here." I smiled warmly and walked closer, making sure to maintain a respectful distance. "I was just passing by and saw you training." I didn't want to interrupt, but I thought I'd check in. Sasuke nodded, his expression softening slightly. "Thanks. I guess it's nice to have a break from training." I sat down on the grass a few feet away from him, giving him space, while also showing that I was there to support him. "You've been working really hard. I've noticed how dedicated you are." He shrugged, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "It's the only way I know how to cope. Training helps me focus and forget about everything else." I could sense the weight behind his words, and it deepened my empathy for him. "I understand. Sometimes, focusing on something you can control helps manage the things you can't. But you don't have to do it alone, you know." Sasuke looked at me, his gaze thoughtful. "You've been a good friend to me, even when I've been distant." "I appreciate that." I felt a warm flush of gratitude at his words. "I'm glad. I've always believed that we all need someone to lean on, especially when things get tough. We don't have to face our struggles alone." For a moment, we shared a comfortable silence, the bond between us feeling stronger than ever. The sun continued its ascent, casting a gentle light over the training grounds. It was a peaceful moment, one that spoke of mutual understanding and the beginning of something deeper. As Sasuke resumed his training, I remained nearby, a watchful and supportive presence. The connection between us was growing, evolving into a friendship that held the promise of mutual support and understanding. I was grateful for the chance to be a part of his journey and to offer a bit of light in the darkness he sometimes faced. The path ahead was still uncertain, but with each passing day, I felt more hopeful about the future. The connection I felt with Sasuke was not just a fleeting emotion but a foundation for something real and meaningful. And as I watched him train, I knew that this journey we were on was just beginning. Chapter 1: A New Start. The first day of the academy was both exciting and nerve-wracking. The sun rose over Konoha with a bright promise of new beginnings, but for me, Naruto Uzumaki, it was a day filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. This was my chance to step out of the shadows and prove myself, not just to the villagers, but to myself. The academy was bustling with activity as children chattered excitedly about their first day. I stood at the entrance, clutching my new uniform and a small bag of supplies. The vibrant energy around me was both exhilarating and intimidating. The thought of blending in with so many new faces was daunting, but it was also a chance to show that I was more than just the troublesome girl everyone seemed to perceive me as. As I walked through the halls, I could feel the eyes of my peers on me, their whispers barely masked by the noise of their conversations. I caught snippets of their words, Jinchuriki, Otsutsuki, and weird, and my heart sank. The whispers were a constant reminder of the isolation I had experienced throughout my life. I entered the classroom, which was filled with eager, curious faces. I found an empty seat near the back, hoping to avoid drawing attention to myself. As I settled in, the instructor, a stern-looking woman with a no-nonsense attitude, began the day's orientation. "Welcome to the academy, everyone. This is where your journey as a ninja begins," she announced. Her voice was authoritative, and I could tell she expected us to take this seriously. Here, you will learn the basics of ninjutsu, teamwork, and strategy. Your performance will be evaluated, and your progress will determine your future assignments." The words were both inspiring and intimidating. I knew I had to excel in order to overcome the prejudices against me. My determination was fueled by a desire to show that I could rise above the stereotypes and prove my worth. Throughout the day, I struggled to keep up with the lessons. While my peers seemed to grasp the material with ease, I found myself lagging behind, trying to absorb the information and keep up with the fast-paced instruction. My efforts were met with mixed reactions. Some students were sympathetic, while others were openly dismissive. At lunch, I sat alone under a tree, eating my meal in solitude. The cafeteria was a chaotic mix of noise and laughter, and I felt like an outsider in a sea of faces. I glanced around, hoping for a sign of acceptance or friendship, but the seats around me remained empty. As I finished my lunch, I spotted Sasuke sitting with a few other children. He seemed engrossed in his own world, his usual aloof expression in place. I watched him from afar, intrigued by the way he carried himself. He was different from the others, reserved, focused, and seemingly unaffected by the chaos around him. Despite my curiosity, I didn't approach him. I had my own struggles to focus on and wasn't sure if he'd be interested in talking to me. Instead, I returned to the classroom, determined to make the most of my time at the academy. The rest of the day passed in a blur of lessons and drills. I was exhausted but driven by a burning desire to prove myself. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the day, I felt a mixture of relief and determination. I walked home, replaying the day's events in my mind. The academy was everything I had hoped for and more, a place where I could learn and grow, but also a place where I would have to fight hard to overcome the challenges that lay ahead. As I approached my small home, Kurama's voice resonated in my mind, offering words of encouragement. "You've done well today, Naruto. The path ahead will be difficult, but remember that every step you take brings you closer to your goals." I nodded silently, grateful for Kurama's support. "Thanks. I know it won't be easy, but I'm determined to make it work." The evening was quiet, a stark contrast to the bustling day I had just experienced. As I prepared for bed, I took a moment to reflect on my goals and the steps I needed to take. I knew that proving myself at the academy was just the beginning of a much larger journey. Lying in bed, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. The first day had been challenging, but it had also reaffirmed my resolve. I was ready to face whatever came next, to show that I was more than just a girl with a unique heritage and a troubled past. I was Naruto Uzumaki, and I was determined to make my mark. With that thought in mind, I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a future where I would be accepted and valued for who I truly was. Chapter 2: Rivalry Ignites. The weeks at the academy flew by in a whirlwind of lessons, drills, and social dynamics. Among the many students, Sasuke Uchiha quickly emerged as a standout. His natural talent and intensity set him apart from the rest, and it didn't take long for me to notice the growing rivalry between us. Our first real interaction happened during a training session, where our paths crossed in a way that would set the stage for our competitive relationship. The training grounds were alive with the sounds of students practicing their techniques, but it was Sasuke's sparring session that drew the most attention. I watched from the sidelines as Sasuke effortlessly demonstrated his prowess with fire jutsu. His movements were precise, his control over the flames flawless. It was both impressive and intimidating. My competitive spirit flared up as I watched him, and I couldn't help but think about how I could prove myself. When it was my turn to spar, I gave it my all, channeling my energy into the jutsu I had been practicing. Despite my best efforts, I struggled to match Sasuke's skill and precision. The frustration was palpable, and I felt the sting of failure as Sasuke's technique overshadowed mine. It was during this training session that the rivalry between Sasuke and me began to take shape. I refused to be discouraged by my initial setbacks. Instead, I channeled my frustration into determination. I would not be outdone by Sasuke, or anyone else for that matter. The rivalry was solidified during one of our mission tasks. We were assigned to a small team with a few other students, tasked with retrieving a lost item from a nearby forest. It seemed like a straightforward task, but the forest was dense and full of hidden challenges. As we navigated through the forest, the tension between Sasuke and me became more apparent. We found ourselves in direct competition as we raced to find the lost item. My competitive nature pushed me to keep pace with Sasuke, despite the obstacles we encountered. At one point, we faced a particularly tricky obstacle, a series of large boulders blocking our path. Sasuke and I were both determined to be the first to find a solution. We approached the boulders from different angles, each of us using our respective skills to tackle the problem. I tried using my jutsu to create a path through the rocks, while Sasuke employed his fire techniques to clear a route. The resulting clash of techniques was both spectacular and intense. The forest was filled with the sounds of our efforts, and I could see Sasuke's determination mirrored in my own. Despite our best efforts, neither of us managed to clear the boulders immediately. The challenge required teamwork, and it became clear that we needed to combine our strengths to succeed. Reluctantly, I approached Sasuke with a suggestion. "Hey, Sasuke," I called out, trying to keep my tone steady despite my competitive edge. "What if we work together to clear these rocks? It'll be faster if we combine our techniques." Sasuke glanced at me, his expression a mix of surprise and skepticism. "Why should I work with you? I'm perfectly capable of handling this on my own." I took a deep breath, trying to control my frustration. "Because we need to finish this mission. We're both stuck here, and working together might be the quickest way to get it done." For a moment, Sasuke seemed to consider my offer. He nodded slightly, acknowledging the practicality of my suggestion. "Fine. But don't slow me down." We joined forces, combining our techniques to create a powerful force that cleared the boulders. The teamwork was effective, and we managed to retrieve the lost item. Despite the competitive edge that marked our interaction, there was a sense of accomplishment in working together. As we returned to the village, the rivalry between Sasuke and me continued to simmer. We pushed each other to be better, and our competitive nature drove us to excel in our training and missions. It was a dynamic that fueled our growth and kept us on our toes. Even though our rivalry was intense, there was an unspoken respect that began to develop. We were two individuals with different goals and approaches, but our shared experiences created a bond that went beyond mere competition. The rivalry ignited during our early academy years became a defining aspect of our relationship. It was a driving force that pushed us both to improve, and it laid the groundwork for the complex dynamic that would continue to evolve over time. As I lay in bed that night, reflecting on the day's events, I felt a sense of anticipation for what lay ahead. The rivalry with Sasuke was just beginning, and I knew that it would be a significant part of my journey at the academy and beyond. With determination in my heart, I prepared myself for the challenges that awaited, ready to face them head-on and prove my worth. Chapter 3: Hidden Strengths. The academy was abuzz with excitement and anticipation as the days went by. With each passing week, the competition among students grew more intense. I was determined to prove my worth and break through the barriers of misunderstanding and prejudice. Despite the struggles, I knew that showing my hidden strengths would be the key to earning the respect of my peers. It began with a routine training session, where our instructor introduced us to advanced jutsu techniques. The exercise involved demonstrating our ability to control and manipulate chakra with precision. Most students showcased their skills with a mix of competence and flair. But I could sense an underlying expectation to be underwhelmed by my performance. When my turn came, I stepped forward with a mixture of determination and nervousness. The eyes of my peers were on me, their expressions ranging from skepticism to mild interest. I took a deep breath and began the exercise, focusing on channeling my chakra with the utmost care. I started with a basic technique, a jutsu I had been practicing in secret. My goal was to perform it with flawless execution, showcasing the control and precision I had developed. As I completed the jutsu, a wave of energy surged through the training ground, creating a stunning display of light and power. The response from my peers was immediate. Gasps of surprise and admiration filled the air as they witnessed the effectiveness of my technique. I could see the shift in their attitudes, their initial skepticism giving way to respect and curiosity. Among the onlookers, Sasuke's gaze was fixed on me. His usual aloof expression was replaced by a rare hint of interest. I could sense that he was evaluating me, recognizing the strength that lay beneath the surface. The respect I earned from my peers was further solidified during a group mission that required us to track and capture a rogue ninja. The mission was challenging, with numerous obstacles and strategic difficulties. Our team was tasked with capturing the target while navigating through a dense forest filled with traps and hidden dangers. As the mission progressed, it became clear that my hidden strengths were an asset. I utilized my unique abilities to sense the presence of the rogue ninja and navigate through the forest with precision. My skills in tracking and strategic thinking proved to be crucial in leading our team to success. The climax of the mission occurred when we cornered the rogue ninja in a secluded clearing. The rogue was a formidable opponent, and our team had to work together to subdue him. In the heat of the battle, I demonstrated my hidden strength by employing a powerful jutsu that caught the rogue off guard, allowing our team to successfully capture him. After the mission was complete, the sense of accomplishment was palpable. My peers, who had previously been indifferent or skeptical, now looked at me with newfound respect. The respect I had earned was not just for my performance during the mission, but for the strengths I had hidden until now. As we returned to the village, the mood among the students was different. There was a sense of camaraderie and acknowledgement of each other's abilities. Even Sasuke, who had been a constant rival, approached me with a nod of approval. "You did well today," he said, his tone more genuine than usual. "I didn't expect you to be so effective." I smiled, feeling a mix of relief and pride. "Thanks, Sasuke. I'm just trying to prove that I can keep up with everyone else." The respect I had earned from my peers and the acknowledgement from Sasuke marked a significant turning point. It was a validation of my efforts and a step towards overcoming the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. As I lay in bed that night, reflecting on the day's events, I felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. My hidden strengths had finally been recognized, and the path ahead seemed a little clearer. I knew that there would still be challenges to face, but I was ready to confront them with renewed confidence and determination. The journey to earning respect was far from over, but I felt that I had taken an important step forward. With each challenge and accomplishment, I was growing stronger and more confident, ready to face whatever came next with the strength and resolve I had always possessed. Chapter 4: A Glimpse of Compassion. The days at the academy were filled with routine and the constant hum of activity. Training sessions, missions, and social interactions formed the backbone of our lives. Amidst this whirlwind, I was focused on proving myself and navigating the intricate dynamics of our peer relationships. The rivalry with Sasuke continued to be a driving force in my life, but it was during an unexpected moment that I saw a different side of him, one marked by compassion. It was a particularly grueling training day. The instructor had pushed us to our limits, demanding more and more from us with each exercise. Exhaustion was beginning to take its toll, and the usual competitive edge was replaced by a shared weariness among the students. I was pushing myself harder than ever, determined not to let the fatigue slow me down. During a break, I was sitting on the edge of the training ground, catching my breath and trying to recover my energy. I noticed Sasuke sitting alone a short distance away, his usual stoic expression softened by the fatigue of the day. He was practicing a new technique, his focus intense and unwavering. As I watched him, I couldn't help but think about how distant and aloof he had always seemed. Our interactions had always been marked by rivalry, with little room for anything else. Yet, there was something different in the way he was handling his training today. My attention was diverted when I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my ankle. I had overexerted myself during one of the exercises, and now the pain was becoming increasingly intense. I tried to ignore it, but the discomfort was growing unbearable. Sasuke noticed my struggle from the corner of his eye. Without a word, he approached me, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "You're limping," he said, his tone less detached than usual. I looked up, surprised by his observation. It's nothing. Just a little pain. I'll be fine. Sasuke frowned slightly, his concern evident despite his attempt to maintain his usual demeanor. Let me see. He crouched down and examined my ankle, his touch surprisingly gentle. His fingers were deft as he assessed the injury, and I could feel the weight of his attention on me. It was a rare moment of vulnerability that he rarely displayed. After a few moments, Sasuke looked up. It's not severe, but you should rest and let it heal. Pushing through it won't do you any good. I was taken aback by his unexpected kindness. Thanks, Sasuke. I didn't expect you to care. He shrugged, trying to play off his actions with a nonchalant gesture. I'm not doing it for you. It's just common sense. Injuries should be treated. Despite his attempt to downplay it, there was a softness in his voice that I had never heard before. It was a glimpse of a different side of Sasuke, one that was compassionate and caring, even if he didn't always show it. As I sat there, resting my ankle, Sasuke went back to his training, but his demeanor had changed slightly. There was an underlying warmth to his actions, a subtle shift that suggested a deeper understanding and empathy. The rest of the day passed with a newfound sense of complexity in my perception of Sasuke. The glimpse of compassion he had shown me was a reminder that beneath the rivalry and the competitive spirit, there was a human connection that we often overlooked. As I lay in bed that night, reflecting on the day's events, I felt a mix of emotions. Sasuke's unexpected kindness had caught me off guard, and it had made me rethink our interactions. The rivalry that had defined our relationship now seemed to be tempered by this new understanding. The glimpse of compassion was a small but significant step towards bridging the gap between us. It was a reminder that even amidst the competition and rivalry, there were moments of connection and kindness that could transform our relationships. With this new perspective, I went to sleep feeling a sense of hope and anticipation. The journey with Sasuke was far from over, but this moment had shown me that there was more to him than I had previously realized. It was a small but meaningful shift, and I was eager to see where it would lead us in the days to come. Chapter 5, Training Together. The sun had barely risen over Konoha, casting a soft golden glow over the village. The training grounds were quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hum of early morning activity. It was during this tranquil time that our training session was scheduled, a rare joint session for Sasuke and me. It wasn't something we had planned, but rather an opportunity that had presented itself. I arrived at the training grounds early, eager to make the most of this chance to work with Sasuke. I stretched and warmed up, my mind filled with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Training with Sasuke was both a challenge and a rare opportunity to bridge the gap between us. When Sasuke arrived, he greeted me with a curt nod. His expression was serious, as always, but there was a flicker of something different in his eyes, perhaps a sign of curiosity or consideration. We exchanged a few words, discussing the focus of our training session. Our instructor had suggested we work together on a technique that required precision and coordination, and I was determined to make the most of it. The technique in question was a combined jutsu that required both offensive and defensive elements. Sasuke would focus on creating a powerful fire-based attack, while I would provide a supportive barrier to enhance the effectiveness of the technique. It was a delicate balance, demanding both cooperation and synchronization. We began by practicing our respective parts separately. Sasuke's fire jutsu was impressive, his control over the flames demonstrating both skill and intensity. I focused on perfecting my barrier, aiming to create a shield that would amplify the power of Sasuke's attack without compromising its precision. As the session progressed, it became clear that our techniques needed to be perfectly timed and coordinated. The process was challenging, and the frustration was palpable as we struggled to synchronize our efforts. Each failed attempt brought its own set of challenges, and we both found ourselves caught in a cycle of trial and error. During a brief break, we sat down to discuss our progress. It was an unusual moment of openness between us. Sasuke's usual aloofness softened slightly as he addressed the difficulties we were facing. This technique isn't as easy as I thought it would be, Sasuke admitted, his voice carrying a hint of frustration. "It's harder to coordinate our efforts than I expected." I nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it's more complicated than it seems. But we can't give up. We need to find a way to make it work." Sasuke's gaze met mine, and for a moment, there was a shared understanding between us. "You're right. Let's figure it out together." With renewed determination, we returned to our training. This time, we approached it with a new sense of teamwork. We focused on communicating more effectively, coordinating our movements and timing with greater precision. It wasn't just about executing our parts correctly, it was about understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. The breakthrough came after several more attempts. When our combined jutsu finally worked seamlessly, the result was spectacular. The fire-based attack, enhanced by my barrier, created a stunning display of power and precision. We stood in awe of our success, a sense of accomplishment washing over us. As the session came to an end, Sasuke and I exchanged a look of mutual respect. The training had been intense, but it had also been a revealing experience. We had learned to work together, to understand each other's strengths, and to overcome our challenges as a team. "Nice work today," Sasuke said, his tone carrying a note of genuine appreciation. "Thanks," I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. "It was a good session. I'm glad we could make it work." As we gathered our things and prepared to leave, I couldn't help but reflect on the significance of the day. The joint training session had been more than just a chance to work on a technique, it had been an opportunity to connect with Sasuke on a deeper level. It was a step towards bridging the gap between us, one that had revealed both our strengths and our ability to collaborate effectively. The experience had given me a new perspective on our rivalry. It wasn't just about competition, it was also about growth, understanding, and partnership. I was grateful for the chance to train with Sasuke and to see a side of him that went beyond the rivalry we had shared. As I walked away from the training grounds, I felt a renewed sense of hope and anticipation. The journey with Sasuke was evolving, and I was eager to see where it would lead us next. The joint training session had been a significant milestone, and I was ready to continue building on the foundation we had established. Chapter 6: Unspoken Words. The days following our joint training session were a whirlwind of activity. The success of our combined jutsu had left me with a sense of accomplishment and an unexpected sense of closeness to Sasuke. As we continued to train and work together, I found myself grappling with new and complex emotions that went beyond the rivalry and competition that had defined our relationship. It was early evening, and the sun was setting over Konoha, casting a warm, orange glow over the village. I sat on the edge of a training field, my thoughts swirling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Sasuke had been unusually quiet lately, and while we had maintained a sense of camaraderie, there was an unspoken tension between us. The training ground was empty, save for the occasional breeze rustling through the trees. I stared at the setting sun, lost in thought. My feelings for Sasuke had grown deeper, but I struggled to find the right words to express them. The complexity of my emotions was matched only by the difficulty of conveying them. Our recent interactions had left me with a profound sense of connection to Sasuke. I admired his strength, his dedication, and the rare glimpses of vulnerability he had shown. The moments we had shared, whether through our joint training or our conversations, had revealed a side of him that I hadn't seen before. Yet, despite these growing feelings, I found myself at a loss for how to communicate them. Every time I tried to express my emotions, my words felt inadequate, and the fear of rejection held me back. The fear of ruining our budding friendship and the uncertainty of how Sasuke would respond weighed heavily on my mind. That evening, as I sat alone, I found myself replaying our past interactions in my mind. I remembered the look of concern Sasuke had shown when he helped me with my injury and the respect he had shown during our training. Each memory was a reminder of how deeply I had come to care for him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching. I turned to see Sasuke walking towards me, his expression thoughtful. He sat down beside me, his presence a comforting contrast to the turmoil in my heart. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. For a few moments, we sat in silence, the quiet of the evening enveloping us. I could feel the weight of my unspoken words pressing on my chest, and the silence between us felt both intimate and excruciating. "I've been thinking," Sasuke finally said, breaking the silence. "About our training sessions, and everything that's happened lately." I looked at him, my heart racing. "What about them?" "I just wanted to say that I've appreciated the time we've spent training together," he said, his tone carrying a sincerity that made my heart skip a beat. "It's been different from what I expected. I think we've made some real progress." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. "I feel the same way. It's been nice working with you. I've learned a lot." Sasuke glanced at me, his expression thoughtful. "You've been pushing yourself hard. I can see that you're committed, and it's not something I take lightly." His words touched me deeply, and I felt a surge of emotion that was difficult to contain. "Sasuke, there's something I need to tell you," I began, but the words caught in my throat. Sasuke turned to me, his gaze steady. "What is it?" I struggled to find the right words, my mind racing with the desire to express my feelings. The weight of my emotions felt overwhelming, and I could sense that this moment was significant. I started again, but the words still wouldn't come. Seeing my struggle, Sasuke reached out and placed a hand on mine. The touch was gentle, and it sent a jolt of warmth through me. "It's okay. You don't have to say anything if you're not ready." His kindness only made it harder to hold back my emotions. I wanted to tell him how I felt, how much he meant to me. But the fear of being vulnerable was paralyzing. Instead, I took a deep breath and tried to convey my feelings through a simple gesture. I squeezed his hand lightly, hoping that the gesture would speak for me. Sasuke's eyes softened as he looked at me. "I'm here for you, Naruto. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together." In that moment, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The unspoken words remained, but the gesture had bridged the gap between us, even if only slightly. It was a step towards understanding, a small but meaningful connection that gave me hope. As the evening continued, Sasuke and I sat together in silence, the unspoken words hanging between us. The connection we shared was evolving, and while I hadn't found the perfect way to express my feelings, I knew that our bond was growing stronger. With each passing day, I hoped that I would find the courage to articulate my emotions fully. For now, I was grateful for the understanding and the quiet moments we shared, knowing that the journey to expressing my feelings was just beginning. Chapter 7: The Academy's Challenge. The Academy's training grounds were abuzz with activity as students gathered for their latest assignment. The sun shone brightly overhead, casting long shadows across the practice field. Today's task was not only a test of skill, but also a challenge in teamwork, and the instructors were keen to see how we would handle it. As I made my way to the designated area, I could feel the excitement and apprehension in the air. This task was reputed to be one of the more difficult challenges we'd faced at the academy, and it required us to team up with a partner. My stomach was a mix of nerves and anticipation, especially since my partner for this assignment was Sasuke. The task was straightforward in theory. Each pair had to complete a series of obstacle courses and combat scenarios designed to test our coordination, strategy, and adaptability. The catch was that we had to rely on each other's strengths to succeed. Failure wasn't an option if we wanted to impress the instructors and prove our capabilities. I spotted Sasuke waiting at the starting line, his expression focused and serious. Despite the growing sense of familiarity between us, there was still an air of formality and distance. I approached him, trying to muster the confidence I felt inside. "Hey, Sasuke," I greeted, trying to keep my tone upbeat. He glanced at me, nodding in acknowledgement. "Hey, Naruto. Ready for this?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the challenge ahead. "As ready as I'll ever be." Our instructor called us to attention, explaining the rules and the importance of teamwork. Each pair would start at different intervals, navigating through the obstacles and combat scenarios while working together to overcome each challenge. The course was designed to test our ability to communicate, strategize, and adapt to unexpected situations. The starting signal was given, and Sasuke and I took off. The first part of the course involved navigating a series of physical obstacles, climbing walls, crossing narrow beams, and jumping across pits. We tackled each obstacle with a combination of agility and determination, coordinating our movements to ensure we didn't falter. Sasuke took the lead in most of the physical tasks, his agility and precision evident in every move. I followed closely, doing my best to keep up and assist where I could. Despite his usual aloofness, Sasuke communicated clearly and effectively, guiding me through the more challenging parts of the course. The second part of the challenge involved a series of combat scenarios. We were faced with simulated enemies, target dummies and illusions, that required us to work together to defeat them. This section demanded a high level of synchronization and strategy, as we had to anticipate each other's actions and coordinate our attacks. As we engaged in the combat scenarios, I noticed how well Sasuke and I were starting to mesh. Our earlier training sessions had laid a foundation, and now we were building on that understanding. I used my abilities to support Sasuke, creating openings and providing cover while he took down the targets with precision. Despite the pressure of the task, there was a growing sense of camaraderie between us. Each successful maneuver, each defeated target, brought a silent acknowledgement of our growing synergy. Sasuke's usual coldness was softened by the shared effort and mutual respect we were developing. During a brief respite between scenarios, I glanced at Sasuke, who was catching his breath. "We're doing pretty well," I said, trying to keep the mood light. Sasuke nodded, his expression slightly less tense. "Yeah, we are. Let's keep it up." We continued through the remaining challenges, our teamwork becoming increasingly fluid. The final section of the course was a combined obstacle and combat scenario, designed to test our endurance and adaptability. We tackled it with a sense of determination, pushing ourselves to the limit. As we crossed the finish line, both exhausted and exhilarated, the instructor's voice echoed over the loudspeaker. "Congratulations, Naruto and Sasuke. You've completed the challenge with impressive teamwork and skill." I looked at Sasuke, a smile breaking through my tired expression. "We did it." Sasuke returned the smile, albeit with his usual calm demeanor. "Yeah, we did. Good job, Naruto." As we made our way back to the academy, the sense of accomplishment and the bond we had forged during the challenge were palpable. The task had not only tested our abilities, but had also brought us closer together. The shared experience had revealed new dimensions to our partnership and had strengthened the foundation of trust between us. The challenge at the academy had been a turning point. It had forced us to confront our weaknesses and build on our strengths, both individually and as a team. The growth we had experienced was more than just physical, it was a deepening of our connection, a recognition of each other's capabilities, and a step towards a more meaningful relationship. As the sun set over Konoha, casting a warm glow over the village, I felt a renewed sense of hope and optimism. The journey with Sasuke was evolving, and I was excited to see where it would lead us next. The Academy's challenge had been a significant milestone, and it had paved the way for new opportunities and deeper connections. Chapter 8: Moments of Vulnerability. The sun was beginning to set, casting a soft, golden light over Konoha. After the intense challenges of the academy, both Sasuke and I had earned a well-deserved break. The training grounds, now quieter, provided a perfect backdrop for a rare moment of respite. We had finished our day's training and were sitting on the edge of the practice field, catching our breath and reflecting on the day's events. The usual banter and competitiveness had given way to a more subdued atmosphere. The exhaustion from our exertions seemed to have loosened our usual guards, allowing us to share a quieter, more introspective moment. Sasuke sat beside me, his expression more relaxed than usual. I could tell that he, too, was feeling the weight of the day's activities. There was an unusual silence between us, and I could sense that this might be an opportunity to connect on a deeper level. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Sasuke, have you ever felt like there's a part of you that you can't quite share with anyone?" Sasuke glanced at me, his eyes reflecting a hint of surprise. "What do you mean?" I shifted slightly, my fingers tracing patterns in the dirt. I mean, sometimes, it feels like there are things inside me that I can't fully express. Like there's a part of me that's always hidden, even from myself. Sasuke's gaze softened as he considered my words. I get what you mean. I've had that feeling for as long as I can remember. There are things about my past and my family that I don't talk about, things that are hard to put into words. His admission surprised me, and I could see the weight of his words in his eyes. You've never really talked about your family, have you? Sasuke shook his head, his expression growing more contemplative. No, I haven't. There's so much that happened, so many things I've had to deal with on my own. It's not easy to open up about it. I nodded, feeling a surge of empathy for him. I understand. I've had my own struggles too. Being a Jinchuriki, it's like there's this constant battle inside me. Kurama is a part of me, but it's not always easy to balance that with who I am and who people see me as. Sasuke looked at me, his expression softening further. I never realized how much you've been carrying. I guess we both have our own burdens. For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of our shared understanding hanging between us. The sun's light was fading, casting long shadows across the field. It was as if the world around us had quieted to give us space to share these vulnerable moments. You know, I began, there's something comforting about talking about these things. It makes the burden feel a little lighter. Sasuke nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Yeah, it does. I've been so focused on my own struggles that I didn't really stop to think about how you've been handling things. Maybe it's time for me to start opening up more. I looked at him, a small smile forming on my lips. I'd like that. I think sharing our struggles can help us understand each other better. We're not alone in this, even if it sometimes feels like we are. Sasuke turned to me, his eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. Thanks, Naruto. For listening. It means a lot. I reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Anytime, Sasuke. We're in this together, after all. As the evening wore on, we continued to talk, sharing more about our personal struggles and the challenges we faced. It was a rare and precious exchange, one that deepened our understanding of each other and strengthened our bond. The moments of vulnerability we shared were a testament to the growing trust between us. We spoke candidly about our fears, our hopes, and the weight of our responsibilities. In those quiet, reflective moments, we found solace in each other's company and a newfound sense of connection. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Sasuke and I sat side by side, our conversation gradually winding down. The field was bathed in the gentle light of the moon, and the cool night air felt refreshing. Well, Sasuke said, breaking the silence, I think we've both had enough of heavy conversations for today. Maybe we can find a way to make our training sessions a bit more enjoyable. I laughed softly, feeling a sense of relief and contentment. That sounds like a good idea. I'm sure we can figure out how to balance the serious stuff with a little bit of fun. Sasuke smiled, a rare and genuine expression. I'm looking forward to it. As we stood up and made our way back to the village, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. The moments of vulnerability we had shared had brought us closer, and I was hopeful that our growing connection would continue to strengthen. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I knew that with Sasuke by my side, I could face it with a sense of hope and determination. Chapter 9, A Bond Formed. The early morning sun cast a warm glow over Konoha, signaling the start of a new day. The Academy's training grounds were once again bustling with activity, but today held a special significance. The latest set of challenges was designed not just to test our skills, but also to evaluate our ability to work together under pressure. Sasuke and I had grown more accustomed to each other's presence, and the once tense rivalry was slowly morphing into something more complex. Our recent training sessions had shown us that we could rely on one another in ways we hadn't anticipated. This day's challenge would be another opportunity to test and strengthen that evolving bond. As I approached the training grounds, I noticed Sasuke already waiting. His usual stern expression was softened by a hint of anticipation. We exchanged nods, a silent acknowledgement of the journey we had been on together. The challenge for the day was a series of combat and strategy exercises. We would be paired with each other and other students to tackle various scenarios, ranging from simulated battles to tactical problem-solving tasks. The goal was to showcase our ability to collaborate and adapt. And I knew that working with Sasuke would be both a test and an opportunity. The first exercise involved a simulated ambush scenario where we had to protect a VIP from a series of mock attackers. Sasuke and I were assigned to protect the VIP together, and it required us to combine our strengths and strategies effectively. The scenario began, and we immediately fell into a rhythm. Sasuke took on the role of the primary defender, using his agility and precision to neutralize the incoming attackers. I supported him by using my abilities to create barriers and distractions, allowing him to focus on the most immediate threats. Despite the chaos of the simulated ambush, we communicated seamlessly, our actions synchronizing in a way that was both efficient and effective. There were moments when we exchanged quick, unspoken signals, each of us anticipating the other's next move. It was a stark contrast to our earlier encounters, where our interactions had been marked by competition and distance. The second exercise was a strategic problem-solving task, requiring us to work together to devise a plan and execute it under time constraints. We were presented with a series of obstacles that needed to be overcome, and our success depended on our ability to coordinate and adapt. We huddled together, discussing our approach. Sasuke's analytical mind and strategic thinking complemented my more intuitive and creative problem-solving style. We debated various strategies, weighing the pros and cons of each, and finally settled on a plan that balanced both of our strengths. As we executed our plan, it became clear how well we worked together. Our combined efforts allowed us to navigate the obstacles efficiently, and the task that had initially seemed daunting was accomplished with relative ease. The shared success of the exercise brought a sense of camaraderie that had been gradually building between us. During a brief break, Sasuke and I found a quiet corner to catch our breath. The intensity of the exercises had created a palpable sense of accomplishment, and there was a new ease in our interactions. "That was pretty impressive," Sasuke said, his tone carrying a hint of genuine appreciation. "We actually worked really well together." I grinned, feeling a surge of pride. "Yeah, we did. It's amazing how much we've improved." Sasuke looked at me, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad we're working together. It's made things a lot better." His admission surprised me, and I felt a warm flush of gratitude. "Me too, Sasuke. I think we're really starting to understand each other." As we resumed the next set of exercises, our bond continued to strengthen. The once antagonistic rivalry was transforming into a genuine partnership, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. We faced each challenge with a sense of teamwork and trust that was becoming a defining aspect of our relationship. The final exercise of the day involved a mock rescue mission. We were required to navigate through a complex series of obstacles and enemies to reach and rescue a hostage. The exercise tested not only our combat skills but also our ability to strategize and work together under pressure. Sasuke and I tackled the mission with a newfound synergy. Our earlier experiences had taught us how to complement each other's strengths, and this was evident in the way we approached the task. We moved with precision, our actions coordinated and purposeful. As we successfully completed the rescue mission, the sense of accomplishment was palpable. We had faced the day's challenges together, and the results spoke for themselves. The bond that had formed between us was no longer just a product of our shared experiences, it was a genuine connection that had developed through our mutual respect and understanding. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the training grounds, Sasuke and I sat together, reflecting on the day's events. "You know," Sasuke said, his voice thoughtful, "I think we've come a long way from where we started. There's a real connection between us now." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "I feel the same way. It's been a journey, but it's been worth it." Sasuke looked at me, his eyes reflecting a mix of determination and gratitude. Let's keep this going. We've got more challenges ahead, and I want to face them with you by my side. I smiled, feeling a sense of optimism for the future. Absolutely. Together, we can handle anything. As we made our way back to the village, the growing bond between us was a source of strength and inspiration. The rivalry that had once defined our interactions had evolved into a partnership built on trust, respect, and genuine connection. The journey was far from over, but with each challenge we faced, we were forging a path towards something greater, a bond that would carry us through the trials and triumphs ahead. Chapter 10: Hidden Emotions. The moonlight cast a silvery glow over Konoha, bathing the village in a serene light. The night was unusually calm, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions and events that had unfolded over the past weeks. I found myself on the roof of the academy, gazing up at the stars, my thoughts drifting through the recent experiences that had brought Sasuke and me closer. Our bond had evolved significantly from the initial rivalry. The competitive edge had softened, replaced by a genuine understanding and a deepening connection. Yet, despite this progress, Sasuke's way of expressing his feelings remained as elusive as ever. I had noticed subtle changes in Sasuke's behavior, small gestures that spoke volumes. He would occasionally check to make sure I was all right, offer a hand when I stumbled, or even go out of his way to make our training sessions more manageable. These actions, though often brief and unspoken, hinted at a care that he seemed reluctant to fully acknowledge. Tonight, as I sat on the roof, I heard the soft, familiar sound of footsteps approaching. I turned to see Sasuke walking towards me, his face illuminated by the moonlight. He paused a few feet away, his expression unreadable, but his eyes betraying a hint of concern. "What are you doing up here?" he asked, his voice carrying a tone of mild curiosity. I shrugged, trying to keep my tone casual. "Just needed some time to think. It's been a busy few days." Sasuke nodded, walking over and taking a seat beside me. For a moment, we sat in silence, the only sounds being the gentle rustle of the wind and the distant hum of the village. The quiet was comfortable, yet there was an unspoken tension between us. "I've been meaning to ask," Sasuke began, breaking the silence, "how are you holding up? With everything that's been going on?" I looked at him, surprised by the directness of his question. "I'm doing okay. It's been tough, but I'm managing." "Why do you ask?" Sasuke hesitated, his eyes flickering with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "You've been working really hard lately. I just wanted to make sure you're not overdoing it." I smiled, touched by his concern. "Thanks, Sasuke. I appreciate it. It's nice to know someone's looking out for me." He glanced away, his usual stoic demeanor returning. "It's not like that. I just don't want to see you push yourself too hard." The awkwardness in his tone was unmistakable, and I could tell he was struggling with how to express his feelings. It was clear that he cared, even if he found it difficult to articulate. "Hey," I said gently, "if you ever need to talk or anything, I'm here for you too. We're in this together, remember?" Sasuke looked at me, his eyes softening. "Yeah, I remember. Thanks, Naruto." The moment was brief, but it held a significance that was hard to ignore. Sasuke's unspoken care was evident in his actions, even if his words fell short. It was a side of him I had come to appreciate, and it made me realize just how much our relationship had grown. As we continued to sit in companionable silence, I felt a sense of warmth and connection that had been steadily building between us. The hidden emotions that Sasuke struggled to express were becoming more apparent, and I was learning to read between the lines of his reserved demeanor. Eventually, Sasuke stood up, his posture reflecting a mix of determination and reluctance. "I should head back. We've got another busy day tomorrow." I nodded, standing up beside him. "Yeah, me too. But thanks for checking in. It means a lot." Sasuke gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Anytime, Naruto." As he walked away, I watched him disappear into the night. The encounter had been brief, but it was a step forward in understanding the complex layers of Sasuke's feelings. His actions and words, though often restrained, revealed a depth of care that was becoming more evident. I sat back down on the roof, reflecting on the conversation. The night sky was still clear, the stars shining brightly above. I felt a sense of hope and optimism for the future. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, I knew that the bond we were forming was becoming stronger with each passing day. As I made my way back to my home, I couldn't help but smile. The journey we were on was far from easy, but it was one that was bringing us closer together. The hidden emotions and unspoken connections were becoming a testament to the depth of our growing relationship. The path ahead was uncertain, but with each step we took, I felt more confident that we were building something meaningful and lasting. And in that certainty, I found a renewed sense of purpose and hope for the days to come. Chapter 11, Confession of Feelings. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden hue over the village of Konoha. The training grounds were quieter than usual, the day's activities winding down as students and instructors headed home. I lingered behind, my thoughts tangled in a knot of anxiety and anticipation. Today, I had resolved to express something I had been holding in for a long time. Sasuke and I had spent the day training together, our usual routine punctuated by a comfortable silence. We had grown accustomed to each other's presence, and the bond between us had deepened. Yet, beneath the surface, I had been wrestling with my feelings, emotions that I could no longer keep buried. As I watched the last rays of sunlight fade, I knew it was time. I took a deep breath and made my way to the training grounds where Sasuke was finishing up his routine. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable, but his eyes attentive. "Hey, Sasuke," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk for a minute?" He raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "Sure. What's up?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. It felt like an eternity before I found the courage to speak. "There's something I need to tell you. Something important." Sasuke set down his training equipment and walked over to where I stood. "Okay. What is it?" I took another deep breath, feeling my heart pound in my chest. The weight of my emotions felt almost unbearable, but I knew I had to be honest. "Sasuke, I've been feeling something for a while now. It's more than just friendship, and I can't keep it to myself anymore." Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly, and he crossed his arms. "What are you saying, Naruto?" I looked down, my cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "I'm saying that I have feelings for you. I've been trying to ignore them, to push them aside, but I can't anymore. I care about you a lot, and it's more than just being teammates or friends." The silence that followed felt heavy, and I could sense Sasuke's internal struggle. He remained still, his expression guarded as he processed my confession. The moment seemed to stretch on, each second feeling like an eternity. "I didn't expect this," Sasuke finally said, his voice low and hesitant. "I've always thought of us as rivals and partners. I didn't realize. I didn't know you felt this way." I swallowed hard, feeling a pang of anxiety. "I understand if you don't feel the same way. I just needed you to know how I feel. I didn't want to keep it inside any longer." Sasuke ran a hand through his hair, clearly conflicted. "Naruto, you're important to me. We've been through a lot together, and I value our bond. But this is new to me. I don't know how to respond to it." I nodded, my heart sinking a little at his uncertainty. "I get it. I didn't mean to complicate things. I just wanted to be honest with you." There was a moment of silence as Sasuke seemed to wrestle with his thoughts. Finally, he spoke again, his voice softer. "I appreciate your honesty. It means a lot to me that you're willing to share your feelings, even if it's difficult." I looked up at him, hoping for some sign of clarity. "So, what do we do now?" Sasuke sighed, looking out at the fading sunlight. "I need time to think. This is a lot to process, and I want to be sure of my feelings before I say anything else." I felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. At least he wasn't rejecting me outright, but the uncertainty left me feeling vulnerable. "I understand. Take all the time you need." Sasuke turned to face me, a faint, thoughtful expression on his face. Thank you for being patient with me. I'll figure things out, I promise. We stood there in silence, the evening growing darker around us. The weight of the conversation hung in the air, but there was also a sense of hope. I had taken a significant step in sharing my feelings, and though the outcome was uncertain, I felt a sense of liberation. As we parted ways, I felt a mix of emotions, hopeful yet apprehensive. The path ahead was unclear, but I was willing to wait and see where it would lead. In the meantime, I took comfort in knowing that I had been honest about my feelings, and that was a significant step forward. The village was quiet as I walked home, the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky. The confession had been difficult, but it was a necessary step in our journey. I hoped that, with time, Sasuke would come to terms with his own feelings, and that our bond would continue to grow, whatever the future held. Chapter 12, Painful Rejection. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows over the village of Konoha. It was a new day, but the atmosphere felt heavy and fraught with tension. I awoke with a sense of dread, knowing that I had laid my heart bare the night before. The vulnerability I felt was matched only by my anxiety about Sasuke's response. I had spent the night wrestling with my thoughts, replaying every moment of our conversation. I had hoped for some sign of mutual understanding or reciprocation, but the uncertainty had lingered, casting a shadow over my heart. I dressed slowly, my mind preoccupied with what was to come. When I arrived at the training grounds, Sasuke was already there, his figure silhouetted against the backdrop of the early morning sky. I could tell he had been up for a while, his posture tense and distant. As I approached, my heart raced, and I could feel the weight of the conversation we had the previous evening hanging between us. Sasuke looked up as I neared, his expression guarded and serious. There was a look of determination in his eyes, but it was overshadowed by something that felt like hesitation. I swallowed hard, trying to muster the courage to face whatever was coming. "Morning, Sasuke," I said, my voice unsteady. He nodded curtly, his gaze fixed on the ground. "Morning, Naruto." The silence between us was palpable, filled with an uncomfortable tension that I couldn't ignore. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Sasuke," I began, "about last night. Have you had a chance to think about what I said?" Sasuke's shoulders stiffened slightly, and he turned to face me fully. His eyes were troubled, and his voice was low as he spoke. "I've thought about it. And I want to be honest with you." My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and hope flooding me. "Okay. What did you decide?" Sasuke looked away, his expression pained. "Naruto, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how deep your feelings were, and I've been thinking a lot about it. But the truth is, I don't feel the same way. I care about you as a friend and a teammate, but I can't reciprocate your feelings." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt as though the ground had shifted beneath me, leaving me reeling. My breath caught in my throat, and I struggled to process the sting of his rejection. "I understand," I managed to say, my voice trembling. I wanted you to know how I felt. I didn't expect you to change your feelings for me." Sasuke's face softened with a mixture of regret and discomfort. "I didn't want to hurt you. Naruto. I hope you understand that this wasn't easy for me either." I nodded, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. "I get it. I just wish things could have been different." There was a long pause as we stood there, the silence between us feeling more profound than ever. I could see the pain in Sasuke's eyes, a reflection of the internal struggle he had faced. But the hurt I felt was undeniable, a sharp ache that seemed to pierce through me. "Do you think we can still work together as teammates?" I asked quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Sasuke nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Of course. We're still partners, and that won't change. I value our teamwork and friendship." I forced a small, brave smile. "Thanks, Sasuke. I'll do my best to make sure this doesn't affect our work." As I turned to leave, I felt a wave of exhaustion and sadness wash over me. The rejection was painful, and the realization that things might never be the same was a heavy burden to bear. Yet, I was determined not to let it break me. The village seemed different as I walked through it, the colors and sounds blending into a backdrop of melancholy. I knew I needed to process my emotions and find a way to move forward. Despite the pain, I was resolved to maintain my focus and continue with my duties. In the days that followed, the rift between Sasuke and me became more apparent. Our interactions were polite but distant, a stark contrast to the closeness we had once shared. The dynamic of our partnership had shifted, and the weight of unspoken emotions lingered in the air. As I lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, I reflected on the events that had transpired. The rejection had been a harsh reality, but it was also a step towards understanding myself and my feelings better. I knew that I had to find strength in the midst of this turmoil and focus on the path ahead. The journey would be challenging, and the emotional scars would take time to heal. But I was determined to persevere, to find solace in the friendships I still had, and to continue growing both as a person and a ninja. The road to recovery would be long, but I was committed to facing it with resilience and courage. Chapter 13: The Healing Process. The days following Sasuke's rejection were a blur of emotions. Each day felt like a struggle to maintain a semblance of normalcy while dealing with the pain that lingered just beneath the surface. The training grounds, once a place of camaraderie and growth, now felt like a battleground of conflicting feelings and unresolved tension. I woke up early that morning, the weight of yesterday's events heavy on my shoulders. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft, golden light over my room. I had slept fitfully, plagued by restless dreams and the echo of Sasuke's words. My heart ached with the sting of unfulfilled hopes, and it was a challenge to keep my emotions in check. I decided to go for a run to clear my mind. The cool morning air was refreshing, but it did little to lift the heaviness that clung to me. I ran through the village, my feet pounding against the ground as if I could outrun my feelings. But no matter how fast I went, the pain remained, a constant companion. Eventually, I made my way to a quiet, secluded spot near the edge of the village, one of my favorite places to reflect. Sitting down on a rock, I stared out at the landscape, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had hoped that physical exertion would help me process my emotions, but the reality was that I needed something more profound. Kurama, sensing my distress, reached out to me with a gentle nudge. His voice was a comforting rumble in the back of my mind. "Naruto, I can feel your sadness. You don't have to go through this alone." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath as I felt Kurama's presence surround me. "It hurts so much, Kurama. I didn't think it would be this difficult." "Heartache is never easy," Kurama responded softly. "But it's important to remember that this pain, though intense, will pass. You've faced challenges before, and you've emerged stronger each time." I nodded, feeling a sense of solace in Kurama's words. "How do I move on from this? How do I heal?" "Healing takes time," Kurama explained. "Allow yourself to feel the pain, but don't let it consume you. Focus on the things that bring you joy and strength. Remember that you have friends who care about you and a purpose that drives you." I thought about Kurama's advice, considering how to apply it to my life. It was true that I had friends and goals that I needed to focus on. As much as the pain of Sasuke's rejection was overwhelming, I couldn't let it define me. I had a duty as a ninja, and I needed to channel my energy into something constructive. Later that day, I decided to visit a few of my friends. They noticed my subdued demeanor but were careful not to push too hard. Sakura and Kakashi both offered their support, and though their words were kind, I found comfort in their presence more than anything else. Sakura approached me with a warm smile, her eyes filled with understanding. "Naruto, if you ever need to talk or just hang out, I'm here for you. We're friends, and that means we support each other, no matter what." I returned her smile, grateful for her offer. "Thanks, Sakura. I appreciate it. I'm just trying to figure things out right now." Kakashi, ever the enigmatic mentor, simply patted me on the back with a reassuring smile. Remember, Naruto, strength comes not just from physical prowess, but from the ability to overcome emotional challenges. You've got this. Their support was a balm to my wounded spirit, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this journey. I spent time with them, participating in activities that brought me joy and laughter. It was a small step towards healing, a way to remind myself that life continued despite the heartache. As the days turned into weeks, the pain gradually became more manageable. I focused on my training and responsibilities, channeling my emotions into my work. Kurama continued to offer guidance and support, reminding me of my strength and resilience. One evening, as I sat by the river reflecting on the progress I had made, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The wound of rejection had not disappeared entirely, but it had become a part of my past, a chapter in my life that had taught me valuable lessons about love, friendship, and personal growth. Kurama's voice resonated softly in my mind. You've come a long way, Naruto. Healing is a journey, and you're on the right path. Remember to be kind to yourself and continue moving forward. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settling over me. The road to recovery was ongoing, but I was ready to face whatever came next with renewed strength and determination. The pain of the past had shaped me, but it would not define my future. As I stood up and began walking back towards the village, I felt a sense of hope and optimism. The healing process was far from complete, but I was confident that, with time and support, I would emerge stronger and more resilient than before. Chapter 14: A New Understanding. The days had passed in a blur since the conversation that had altered the course of our relationship. Sasuke and I continued to work together as teammates, but an invisible barrier had formed between us. Our interactions were polite but distant, and the air was thick with unspoken emotions. I had been trying to focus on my training and duties, but the emotional strain was undeniable. Each encounter with Sasuke felt like navigating a minefield of unresolved feelings and awkward silences. Despite my efforts to maintain a normal routine, the impact of our conversation was evident in both of us. Sasuke, on his end, had been grappling with his own thoughts. His aloof demeanor was now interspersed with moments of deep contemplation, and he often found himself lost in thought during training sessions. The weight of our interaction had clearly affected him, and it was becoming increasingly apparent that he was struggling to come to terms with his own feelings. One afternoon, after a particularly intense training session, Sasuke and I found ourselves alone on a hillside overlooking the village. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the landscape. We sat in silence for a while, the only sounds being the distant chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Sasuke finally broke the silence, his voice quiet and contemplative. Naruto, can we talk? I looked at him, surprised by the request. Of course. What's on your mind? He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us. About what you said and how I responded. I nodded, my heart pounding with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I see. And what have you come to realize? Sasuke's gaze was fixed on the horizon, his expression thoughtful. I've come to understand that my response was perhaps too quick and not entirely fair. I didn't take enough time to consider your feelings and the impact of my words. I was so focused on my own confusion and emotional walls that I didn't fully appreciate what you were going through. I listened intently, my emotions a swirl of hope and skepticism. And how do you feel now? Sasuke's eyes met mine, and there was a vulnerability in his gaze that I hadn't seen before. I'm starting to realize that I may have underestimated the depth of your feelings. I've been reflecting on my own emotions and the way I've been dealing with them. It's clear that I've been pushing people away, and I need to address that. The sincerity in Sasuke's voice was undeniable. I could see the struggle he was going through, and it made me appreciate the effort he was putting into understanding himself and our situation. I'm glad you're taking the time to reflect. It means a lot to me. Sasuke nodded slowly. I want to be honest with you, Naruto. I don't know if I can change my feelings overnight, but I want to try to be more open and understanding. I realized that my rejection might have hurt you more than I intended. I felt a glimmer of hope as Sasuke spoke. His willingness to acknowledge the impact of his actions and his commitment to self-reflection was a significant step forward. Thank you, Sasuke. I appreciate your honesty. It's been hard, but I'm glad we're talking about it. Sasuke's expression softened, and he looked at me with a hint of regret. I hope we can find a way to move forward from this. I value our friendship and teamwork, and I don't want my actions to create a lasting rift between us. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. I agree. Let's focus on working together and supporting each other. We've faced challenges before, and I believe we can get through this too. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft, orange hue over the landscape, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. The conversation with Sasuke had been a crucial step in our journey towards understanding and healing. While the path ahead was still uncertain, there was now a sense of clarity and mutual respect that had been absent before. We sat together in comfortable silence, the weight of our previous conversation slowly lifting. It was clear that there was still much to be resolved, but the willingness to communicate and understand each other was a positive sign. As we made our way back to the village, the atmosphere between us felt lighter. There was still a lot of healing to be done, but the first steps had been taken. The journey towards understanding and growth was ongoing, but with each passing day, I felt more confident that we could navigate it together. Chapter 15: Rebuilding Bridges. The days following our conversation were filled with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Sasuke and I had begun the process of rebuilding our relationship, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, there was a tangible shift in the atmosphere between us. The initial awkwardness was giving way to a more genuine connection, built on mutual understanding and respect. Our daily training sessions had taken on a new dynamic. There was a noticeable change in Sasuke's approach, marked by a willingness to engage more openly. The barriers that had once separated us were slowly coming down, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and trust. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of tension, but we were both committed to making things work. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Sasuke and I decided to take a break by the river that flowed through the outskirts of Konoha. The setting sun painted the sky with hues of pink and orange, casting a warm glow over the water. We sat down on the grass, the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle lapping of the river creating a serene backdrop. Sasuke turned to me with a thoughtful expression. Naruto, I wanted to thank you for being patient with me. I know I haven't made it easy, and I appreciate that you're willing to work through this with me. I smiled, feeling a sense of relief. It's not been easy for either of us, but I'm glad we're trying. Our friendship and teamwork mean a lot to me. Sasuke nodded, his gaze focused on the river. I've been reflecting on how I've handled things. I realize now that I've been so focused on my own struggles that I didn't see how my actions affected you. I want to make things right. I appreciated Sasuke's honesty. It was a significant step in our journey towards rebuilding our relationship. I understand. It's been a learning process for both of us. We've had our share of misunderstandings, but I believe we can move past them. As we talked, the conversation naturally shifted to our shared experiences and goals. We began to reconnect on a deeper level, discussing our hopes and aspirations for the future. It was clear that we both had a desire to grow and improve, both as individuals and as a team. During our discussions, Sasuke opened up about his own fears and insecurities. It was a side of him that I hadn't seen before, and it helped me understand him better. I shared my own thoughts and feelings as well, allowing him a glimpse into my own vulnerabilities. Our interactions became more comfortable and genuine. We found ourselves laughing more often and enjoying each other's company. The small gestures of kindness and support became more frequent, gradually erasing the remnants of tension that had lingered between us. One day, as we walked through the village together, Sasuke glanced at me with a hint of a smile. You know, Naruto, I've been thinking about how far we've come. It's been a challenging journey, but I'm grateful for the progress we've made. I nodded in agreement. Me too. It's been a journey of growth and understanding. We've learned a lot about each other and ourselves. Sasuke's expression grew more serious. I know we still have a lot to work through, but I'm committed to putting in the effort. Our bond is important to me, and I want to make sure we continue to grow stronger together. I felt a surge of warmth and optimism. I feel the same way. Let's keep moving forward and supporting each other. We've faced challenges before, and I know we can overcome this one too. As the days turned into weeks, the process of rebuilding our relationship continued. We made a conscious effort to communicate openly and honestly, addressing any issues as they arose. The foundation of trust and respect that we had started to build grew stronger with each passing day. Our teamwork improved significantly, and we began to work together more seamlessly. The bond that had once been strained was now more robust and resilient. We still had moments of disagreement and tension, but they were met with a newfound understanding and willingness to resolve them. One evening, as we sat by the river once more, I looked at Sasuke with a sense of contentment. I think we've come a long way. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's stronger than it was before. Sasuke smiled, a genuine expression of satisfaction on his face. I agree. It's been a journey, but it's one I'm glad we've taken together. I value our friendship and the progress we've made. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a final glow over the river, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey of rebuilding our relationship had been challenging, but it had also been incredibly rewarding. We had learned and grown together, and the future now seemed filled with promise and potential. We stood up, ready to head back to the village, but the bond we had forged remained strong. The path ahead was still unfolding, but with each step, we were building a foundation for a lasting and meaningful connection.